Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Hang Up. This is my Wednesday night show here on the line. And, while the Sunday shows tend to be a lot about religion, this one tends to be about whatever I'm hung up on. And for years now, it's primarily focused on political stuff. Um, this is a live call-in show. You can call 720-619-2288, or there's a link down below for how you can call in and actually start interacting with us this evening. But I'll still put theist at the top of the queue. I will always put theist at the top of the queue, but also anybody who disagrees or is confused, or who has a contentious point to make with regard to religion, philosophy, science, politics, whatever. We'll do what we can to try and have a decent frame of reference, or frame of reference. I'm literally reading my note that says frame of reference. Have a decent conversation. But it's been a wild week or two, and the last 24 hours have been kind of stressful for me, but I am much less stressed than I was, and by tomorrow evening I should have some fairly good news. And I will point out that right now we should be streaming this to YouTube, both horizontally and vertically. So if you have a preference, or if you're on a device and you wanted to see it vertically, that should be available right now. And let us know if it's not, because this is the first test of its kind for this solution. I also did a quick stream on my own personal channel in horizontal and vertical. So that's mainly to get YouTube to reach out to different people. Because let's be honest, there's a ton of online call-in shows and potential debates, and they all have their upsides and their downsides, but YouTube farms them out to different people based on the format. I'm hung up on a number of different things, but mainly science. I was born the year we went to the moon, 1969. And I don't remember it. Sorry, I was born in March. We got there in July. I don't really remember it. But for all of my early years, from 1969 through, let's say, 1980, first 11 years of my life, the fact that we went to the moon was a big deal and was still talked about. And, by the time we got to 1980, we were already talking about, were we going to go back? Why aren't we going back? But there have been amazing scientific advancements and achievements. And they're happening at a very rapid rate. I've mentioned before, two of my all-time favorite TV shows are educational programs from James Burke. One of them was Connections, the first series, and the other one is The Day the Universe Changed. And I have the companion book for it and everything else, but it was a way of showing how a farmer in a field solved a problem that ended up leading to the transistor or something like that. I'm not picking an actual example. But what Burke did to show those connections between scientific discoveries and to show what sort of things fundamentally changed the world we're living in, to open our eyes and our minds to new possibilities. You go to the moon, not because you think it's made of green cheese, but because it is a challenge where even if you aren't successful, you solve a bunch of problems and learn a bunch of things that are ultimately beneficial. It's about raw advancement. It's about discovery. Can we actually do this? It is inspiring. It is, and not just like inspiring with regard to what humans are capable of, but hey, let's move our research in this direction because we've found something new, or we found a new way of looking at it. The first moon landing was huge. The one we do next, I don't think is going to be that huge, and I'm a little disappointed. The Artemis 2 mission took place over a 10-day window here recently. And from the very beginning, from launch, there were flat earthers engaged in their live viewing parties already honing the conspiracy they were going to assert, which we knew ahead of time. But I remember sitting there watching them counting cuts. Like, oh, there's a cut, there's a cut, there's a cut. As NASA and the feed is jumping from one of several cameras to another so that you see what's going on from a variety of angles. And they're counting those as if those are just opportunities to do CGI or an AI generated something. And that instant, before the rocket has even reached the point where they're going to have to start acknowledging that we can see the curvature that they deny all the time, before it even gotten that far, they were protecting their worldview. They were setting up a scenario where they could dismiss all of it. And in doing so, they demonstrated that it doesn't seem to matter to them that while they were watching cuts in live footage from one camera to the other, that the content from each of those cameras is, and presumably will be available, but does exist separately. There's a continuous shot from camera A and a continuous shot from camera B. I don't know what their limitations were on power and storage space, but it's entirely possible that there's an uninterrupted camera shot from outside for the entire mission, the entire 10 days. A 10-day long recording, it doesn't have to be particularly high-res. They took great pictures, but they also didn't think about the fact that there were people on the ground literally watching it. Those people aren't getting cuts in their viewing. They're just using, except when they blink. I guess if you blink, you cut for just long enough. And then there were people in airplanes that were taking pictures and shooting video. I'm amazed there were airplanes allowed to be anywhere near where they could actually take pictures of that. That surprised me more than that there were people shooting footage of it. And then there's everybody who works for the space program. There are 4 astronauts on board there from 2 different countries. What did they do for 10 days if they didn't go to the moon? And are they lying? And how much are they being paid? And how much was their integrity worth to pretend? Do those people even exist? Is the world not real? Have we just made up everything? It's, we don't have a solution to hard solipsism. Maybe you're a brain in a vat and people are trying to convince you the world's round for no apparent reason, in order to hide that it's flat for no apparent reason. I don't know how big the next moon landing is going to be. I don't know how much coverage it's going to get on the news. I hope it's a lot. I hope the world isn't falling apart at such a pace that achievements like this, 50 years apart, I hope that the achievements like this don't go unnoticed. They don't go unappreciated. Because there were kids that grew up when I grew up, and all they wanted to be was astronauts. All they wanted to be was astrophysicists. All they wanted to do was investigate the planets. These are the people who got mad when Pluto was demoted. These are the people who don't get mad at Neil deGrasse Tyson when he points out science errors in movies. These are the people who are like, I must have this. And I don't know that we're doing anything to inspire that anymore. We've failed generally when it comes to education for a great many people. And I think we've also failed to inspire on science. And don't get me wrong, I don't even know where the blame should rest for that, like for that failure. Because there's a lot of stuff to focus on. I mean, nobody's really paying attention to climate change right now. We're still trying to avoid the Epstein files with, countless wars and rumors of wars and end-time prophecies and whatever else. And because of all that, I found that my escape over the last few months has been into science and skepticism. So on my personal channel, I'm going to be launching a new show that's just about teaching skepticism and answering questions about it and getting into stuff like that, because I'm not qualified to teach the science. But tonight and many other nights, I love bringing in people who are way overqualified to be teaching the science. So join me in welcoming Dr. Blitz, as I've been entertaining myself, not just watching his content, but listening to Feynman lectures And I have loads of questions, and then we'll get to calls. First of all, how are you? And thanks for showing up.
Well, you're welcome for showing up. And, I'm doing about as well as I can about 3 weeks post-surgery. So, I have minor complaints, but that's about it.
Thanks. So, how important is the Artemis mission in your eyes?
Honestly, I could give or take it. However, I think as far as like public policy and public trust or public desire to see more science, more space exploration, I think it's super important. Like as far as my scientific research is concerned, like I don't care.
Yeah.
But I think it's important that people are getting really excited about this stuff again.
The I'm looking, I'm looking forward to. I'm hoping, and this is the weird thing. I think the biggest benefit of the next Artemis mission, which will land on the moon, is to provide even more evidence for something that we've known for ages, and that's that the Earth is round and the moon orbits it, and we've been there. And so I don't know that the people who are denying it now, I don't know if there's anything that can change their mind. We took people to the South Pole, and it didn't change their mind.
Well, I mean, technically there is a guy who goes by the name of Jaren or Jarenism somewhere on YouTube. He was a flat earther. He went to the South Pole. Now he's not a flat earther. So that's one win, right?
But the people who agreed with him and liked him think he's now just been paid off and
Oh
is
yeah.
part of the conspiracy too.
Yeah, I mean, there's no winning, right? And kudos to him for being intellectually honest and being able to evaluate the evidence and see that the wool was pulled over his eyes for a decade plus, but that is not the norm.
I'm in favor of taking everybody who's a flat earther and just sending them to the moon and creating a base up there for them to build themselves and be confident. And then we'll squash that right off the bat.
I mean, they would just think that it's like CGI or something anyway. So
I'm in a sound stage in somewhere outside of Los Angeles.
they injected my legs with steroids so I can jump 6 times higher.
It's amazing. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that would have been something. Um, we've got callers starting to queue up, and before we do that, I had some sciency questions, and the one that I want to get to the most is I have during the course of been I've been listening to the Feynman lectures, and through the course of it, I've come up with tons and tons of questions specifically about relativity and frames of reference. So you and I told you kind of what I'm thinking ahead of time, and that is that I'll just run through it real quick, and then I will shut up and let's correct everything and teach properly. From my understanding, photons experience no time from their frame of reference, but I've also heard competing reports that it may not be fair to actually say that they have a frame of reference, and I don't know if that's because they are from their frame of reference emitted and absorbed within the same instant, which to me makes them non-existent in their own frame of reference, even if they seem to exist for a period of time or do exist for a period of time from our frame of reference. So if we were to draw a graph with mass on one axis and existence in space-time on the other axis, so how much time you existed in space-time, I would have a photon at the origin, that it's massless, and from its frame of reference, it exists for no time at all in space. But from my frame of reference, it would exist for some amount of time in space. So it would be directly on the axis. And I would be somewhere out here, 50, whatever my mass is, and however old I am. And the second part of that question is there something that we know exists that occupies zero time from our frame of reference? That's two separate things. So basically fix where I'm broken on photons and my curiosity.
Okay, so first, a frame of reference is a very specific thing. It is a set of coordinates, say, that you can get to from another set of coordinates. These coordinates describing places and times in space-time. There is a formula, or rather, it's a set of formulas that you use to go from one frame of reference to another. These are called Lorentz transformations in special relativity. And relative variable, or the relevant variables that you use to transform between reference frames are A, where is the center of the frame of reference? And B, how are the centers of the frames of reference moving relative to one another? So you can say that the origins agree, like maybe you and I are at the same place, or at least very close by, but you're moving relative to me. Or I could say that you're far away, but not moving relative to me. And those are the relevant variables that you would plug in to transform between my frame of reference and your frame of reference. Now, the trouble is the formula is not compatible with plugging in a frame of reference that is moving at the speed of light relative to you. The formula doesn't work. So in order to say that something has a valid frame of reference, you have to be able to go from frame of reference 1 to frame of reference 2. There has to be a valid transformation from one to the other. There is no such thing to move to a frame of reference that's moving at the speed of light relative to you. So there is no valid frame of reference for anything moving at the speed of light. So this is to say, when we talk about the time experienced by something, what we're really talking about is something called the proper time. This is essentially how much time would be elapsed on a wristwatch that is living in that reference frame. Because there is no reference frame, there is no proper time for a photon. There is no reference frame for a photon. There is no proper time for a photon. So it's not even a reasonable question to ask how much time is experienced by a photon. Now what you can say is, you can ask, does a photon have a past and a future? People will say, well, it has zero proper time, so it doesn't have a past or a future. But that's a mistake. Clearly, photons have pasts and futures. From our perspective, absolutely they do. There's, the photon was emitted 30 years ago and some star 30 light years away, and then it gets to us. And so halfway between that, in that journey, its past was being emitted, its future is being absorbed. And even along the photon's trajectory, you can even talk about the past and future from a photon's perspective. There's something called affine time, which is a way of quantifying how much time the photon has experienced in a non-proper way. And even then, there is still a totally reasonable notion of past and future. There's just not a notion of duration. So this is all to say, photons definitely don't have a valid frame of reference in a special relativistic sense, but they absolutely, in every sense of the word, are going to have a totally reasonable past, future, and present, and those are not the same thing. Common misconception, this is the kind of common misconception that even Neil deGrasse Tyson says, because as brilliant a guy as he is an astrophysicist. He is not a relativist. This is not what he spends his time on. So he is recounting what he learned in maybe grad school. So suffice to say, common misconception, photons do have different pasts and futures, different presents. They don't have a valid frame of reference. They do have mass, or they don't have mass. They do exist for a certain amount of time. Hopefully that clears up everything.
Yeah. Is there, okay, this other question may not make sense either, the second part, which is, I've basically argued, and I get this as a philosophical thing that is talking about, like, wow, when we start crossing over from the physics related to universal origins, Big Bang, cosmology, all that stuff, into the philosophy about it, you often get into this something can't come from nothing, and I'm like, where is there nothing or anything else? But I've said that if something, and this is a philosophical point, I suppose, if something exists for zero time, it is, from our point of view, I'll say instead of frame of reference, from our point of view, it is indistinguishable from something that does not exist. But when you start getting into frames of reference, is it fair to say that we cannot know of something and know it to exist in some other frame of reference if it occupies no time from our point of view? Which I switched again. Sorry.
No, that's fine. That's probably true. If something exists for 0 seconds, that would mean, you could just check this mathematically. That would mean that it exists for 0 seconds. Oh, actually, no, that's not the case. But yeah, so if something exists for 0 seconds, though, then yeah, you could reasonably say that it doesn't exist.
I don't know. So there were a number of things that Blitz and I were going to talk about, which one of them I'm going to skip. And that is, some of you are old enough to remember the 1979 film, The Black Hole. Blitz has not seen it. Don't spoil it or anything else. I've encouraged him to check it out, um, and warned him it's a Disney movie, and the black hole may be more of a prop than anything he's ever seen before. But maybe we'll talk about it another time after he's actually seen it. But I was going to get your candidates for best and worst sci-fi representations of hard science, like Greg Bear levels of hard sci-fi.
So, Interstellar does a very, very good job. So, for the record, I'm no biologist, so maybe The Martian is one of the best hard sci-fi, but like it involves like botany, so I couldn't evaluate that. As far as science that is concerned with the kind of stuff that I know about, Interstellar does a very, very good job, with the exception of the last 15 minutes or so. When he enters the black hole and there's the bookshelves throughout all of like that's obviously nonsense, but everything up until then is really, really well done. So Interstellar I'd probably put as it's probably number one. Um, the worst, well, the thing about it is the worst science in hard sci-fi is just any soft sci-fi, right?
Sure.
So like Star Wars, maybe like does
That's
that
fair.
count? I mean, basically any Star Trek, where they talk about inverting the tachyon polarity to reject the chronoton field matrix. Like all of that's obviously mumbo jumbo, right?
Sure.
Or actually, I shouldn't say that. It's nonsense though, to say the least. Um,
When we
so
need a power boost, we change from our totally fictional dilithium crystals to trilithium crystals because we made the
exactly,
first one up.
exactly. I mean, so I don't know. But movies that or media that claims to be hard sci-fi but isn't, I can't think of any off the top of my head.
Well, I've got loads of questions, so I guess you and I are gonna have to do like a million shows until I'm actually
Oh
properly
no.
educated. Bummer. Um, I do have a question, but I'm not going to actually get to it. But I am going to mention what it is because we'll see if people have an interest. There's already some people on the phone lines I want to get to. Some of them are about physics, one of them is about morality. Um, the question I don't want to forget to ask you at some point, whether it's today or another day, it doesn't matter, is shit, I forgot just in the course of doing the show. I'll remember it in a minute.
Okay.
It's that's the way my brain works. I don't retain anything until it's actually been there for like 15 seconds. So in that case, we we will. Oh, it was about quantum teleportation and
Hmm.
its potential impact and your personal thoughts on like something like the transporter problem. But we'll get to that another time.
Oh, I have feelings.
Yeah, I think it's suicide, but I'm gonna go on to some calls and we'll get back to that later. So
Sure.
here we go. Lewis is calling from the UK. Lewis is an atheist, pronouns he, him. Says, I'm not educated on physics, but would like to hear about why general relativity is so important in modern physics. Is it fair to call it an independent subfield of physics because its significance and applications? Hey, Lewis, welcome. Are you there, Lewis? Oh, you're calling from the web, so you may have to tap your phone to wake it up and then tap the
Nope, actually,
browser
that's my
again.
fault. Here, let's start that over like it's a fresh call. So sorry,
Cool.
caller. You should be back on now.
We've got Lewis calling from the UK. Pronouns are he, him. Lewis, an atheist who has questions about physics. And those questions are definitely going to Dr. Blitz. So, Lewis, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hi, I'm very well. How are you?
I have been better. I've been worse. So I'm not going to complain. How can we help? How can Blitz help? Because I can't.
I'll do my best.
I value your input as well, but it is probably
There's your first mistake.
pointed more towards Dr. Blitz. Yeah, I mean, I was reading recently about general relativity, and as I've said in my description, I don't know a lot about physics past schooling, and kind of, I suppose, in a nutshell, what's the big deal about general relativity?
Yeah, I mean, so look, I mean, we can kind of back up the story, right? So if you go back to the 1700s and early 1800s, they basically knew about two things that seemed to explain how the world works. There was gravity, which is how the stars and the planets moved in the sky and why things fell, and then there was electricity and magnetism, which they didn't know were the same thing at the time. But there were these rocks that attracted metal, and then there was also this thing that you could do with amber, where if you rub it, it like attracts other things. And so those were all of the things that they knew about the world. And we called them different things. And so you had some people studying one thing, some people studying the other, and some people studying both, and so on. The world today is very similar. We have general relativity, which is the way that we understand how gravitation works. So we have, the way that the universe is expanding, and the way that that Mercury orbits the sun, and the reason why things fall to the ground. And then we have kind of the quantum branch of physics, which is explaining why electricity and magnetism work, which is explaining how atoms are held, or how the nuclei of atoms are held together. So the reason why we should care about general relativity is because it explains basically everything on the scale greater than, say, the size of an asteroid. You can't really account for the reason why, I don't know, anything happens on scales larger than that without some theory of gravity. And so even though you can get away with Newtonian gravity to get to the moon, really what you have to do is, if you want to explain black holes, or you want to explain, the large scale motion of the universe, then you have to rely on general relativity. And so in some sense, it is kind of a whole branch of physics. It's the kind that I work in primarily. So yeah, I mean, it's a different thing. It has its own mathematical structure. It has its own kind of jargon, etc.
Well, yeah, that's really interesting. So you said that back in the 1700s, is that to suggest that with gravity and electricity being the two main fields, if you will, that there wasn't much understanding of physics outside of broadly gravity and electricity? Is that what I'm understanding from what you said?
Well, so I should clarify. I mean, there was also an understanding of mechanics, like springs and pulleys and those kinds of things. But yeah, I mean, there were just these two separate phenomena in the world. There was this electrical force that Coulomb and others helped develop, and then there was this gravitational force that Newton and people who came after helped develop. And these just seemed to be separate things about the world that required study.
Okay, cool. And well, so you were saying about electricity and how that affects rocks and amber. That's what you said, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or experimentation.
Well, I mean, like if you take amber and you rub it with some cloth, if you take amber and you rub it with some cloth, then it'll like get a static charge. That's what I was getting at.
Yeah. Yeah. And well, that would apply to would that apply to natural and artificial amber? Because
I mean, it applies to a lot of things. Amber was just one of the things that it was known to happen to historically. I think the name electricity actually comes from the Greek word, the ancient Greek word for amber, if I remember correctly. I think if you look up like, yeah, so and that's because they knew if you rub this substance, then it attracts stuff.
Oh, interesting. So yeah, really, well, I think, yeah, as I said, you've helped me understand why general relativity is so important, because it's bigger than everything that's on a larger scale than the quantum scale. Would that be a fair summary?
You need to go a little bit bigger, because then there's still like classical electromagnetism, for example, which governs most of our everyday life, with the exception of why things fall. So yeah, I mean, probably on the scale of things, asteroid size or bigger.
Yeah, that is a lot bigger. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So I suppose then, because, and correct me if I'm wrong, that's why I'm here, that it wasn't until the 60s when pulsars and quasars and black holes were starting to be understood, which I suppose is really when general relativity came into its own.
To an extent, generally the 50s and 60s are viewed as kind of the golden age of relativity, both because of observational facts like you're talking about. We see these pulsars, we see these, the very first signals of things that look like black holes. However, general relativity was required to understand an anomalous behavior of Mercury's orbit going back as early as 1915. This is, in fact, it's part of what made Einstein's relativity so remarkable, is that it was able to account for this anomaly that had existed for decades at this point. They saw Mercury behaving in a certain way, and they couldn't explain it using Newton's laws of motion.
Was that the 1915 was the year that it was that general relativity was published? Is that right?
Yeah.
So is that anomalous activity about its orbit and rotation?
Yeah, it's called the precession of Mercury. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I have, to be honest, run out of things to talk about. But yeah, thank you very much for letting me know about that. That's helped me understand this a lot better.
Awesome.
I'm going to look into this a lot more now. Thank you.
Glad I could help.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Thanks, Lewis. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much.
So we've got a number of lines open. There's still a couple callers here we want to get to, but I noticed we did a poll about the shape of the Earth, and oddly enough, with more than 500 votes, 3% of the people claim that it's flat, and they'll call in to prove it. And I just want to say that so far, you must have ignored the second half of that prompt, because nobody has called in to try to prove that the Earth is flat, despite having what appears to be about 15 people or so claiming that they would call in. So lines are open, 720-619-2288, and there's a call-in studio link down in the description here. If you're someone who thinks that the Earth is flat, by all means. The nice thing is that, well, I'm probably not qualified to debunk specific science-based claims and other things, because it's not my field. I leave that to Simon, Dan, and whoever else is going to be running around debunking. But Blitz can probably take all this stuff on, and has many times. I'm here to show that you don't actually have to know the nuts and bolts on scientific debunking of specific conspiracy claims if you know where the burden of proof rests, what the evidence is for a position, and what questions to ask about what people might be overlooking. That's my only, when it comes to debunking flat Earth, I'm like, okay, how do you demonstrate the truth of this? Because your model doesn't seem to account for eclipses, doesn't seem to account for gravity, you need to account for all that. The model that we have is backed up and supported by seemingly every observation in the universe where we know and understand how things work, or we can, let's be fair. Science doesn't make proclamations of truth and absolute certainty. It builds models that are the best functional descriptions of as much of the available evidence as possible. You're going to have outliers, you're going to have imperfect things, but you have a massive amount of evidence that the Earth is not flat, not a bowl, not surrounded by a firmament, and not younger than the sun, by the way, as Genesis claims, in two different ways. But anyway, so if you're somebody that thinks the Earth is flat, here's your opportunity to call in and actually defend that. Chris is another caller from the UK. Chris, pronouns are he, him. Is an atheist, something about panspermia and missing link between chimps and humans. Wow, no biologists here today. So, Chris, how are you?
Yeah, I'm very good, thanks. How are you?
Not too bad.
Great. Okay, we're both on fire then.
Yep, or we should be.
Please don't be on fire.
Okay, well, I'll try not to spontaneously combust. Okay, I've got a couple of questions of interest. It may well interest you. It might just interest your listeners. I've asked this question to loads of people before, and I've never had a satisfactory answer. So I'm gonna. That's why I've called up, and I wanted to put it to you, just in case you come up with a better, more interesting answer than I've had from anyone else. Okay, yeah, panspermia, like you've said. Do you believe that the Earth is 4.5 billion years old, or 4.7? You know, if you're going to be precise, if the actual powers that be, the people that think they know that we're talking about, you know, if it's 4.7, 4.6, we're talking thousands of millions of years, whatever the fucking difference is, I don't know. Do you actually believe that the Earth started off as a ball of molten rock, which was completely sterile, and then somehow developed an atmosphere, somehow developed life and vegetation upon it without outside panspermia? For those of you that don't know, the definition of panspermia is basically things that come from outside of the Earth, as in extraterrestrial objects containing microbial life forms. That's the best that I understand it anyway.
Sure.
How does the Earth contain water if it started off as a ball of magma, of boiling rock? I mean, how could water possibly exist? I know this is
Steam.
quite a few questions.
You're gonna have
So
steam.
can I just be quiet now and let somebody else speak?
Sure. Yeah, Blitz is already answering.
I mean, yeah, sure, the Earth can be molten. It can be very, very hot. And in that context, you'll have steam, right? You'll have water vapor in the atmosphere, which will be still gravitationally bound to the Earth. And when the Earth cools down, that steam will rain. It will condense and it will rain and form puddles. Now, as far as panspermia is concerned, my only contention, it's possible that panspermia is that life was seeded on Earth from other places, but that just pushes the buck back. At some point, you're going to have a planet or some rocky body perhaps, or perhaps some asteroid or something like this that initially didn't have any life on it. And as a result of chemistry or, complex chemistry, perhaps life formed via, some sort of catalyzed perhaps chemical reaction. And whether or not that happened on Earth or somewhere else, it doesn't seem too implausible to me.
Yeah. So I don't know off the top of my head, because not my field, and it's been ages since I was in school studying it. My summary of the early Earth and its formation is that, you had it was a toxic environment, and the various chemicals that are produced there along with steam end up generating essentially an atmosphere. And then there are, cyclical things that happen within that atmosphere to essentially create the water and everything else. But the part where I'll just pivot off of Blitz is, at some point the Earth didn't have life, and now it does. And so the question is, how did life get here? Now, it's possible that abiogenesis occurred on Earth, as we at least know that the process doesn't violate any scientific principles. I mean, the building blocks of life we found all over the place. And while the Miller-Urey experiments and stuff don't replicate the initial, the known atmosphere of the Earth, they at least demonstrate that sort of protein can form under some conditions. So now the question is, did life on Earth form here, or did it form somewhere else first? And as Blitz was pointing out, saying it formed somewhere else first just pushes the issue back, because what we really want to know is, how does abiogenesis work? And it doesn't matter to me whether it happened on Earth, whether life on Earth comes from abiogenesis on Earth, or whether it comes from panspermia that was abiogenesis somewhere else. The only way in which panspermia is interesting to me as a potential solution is if it's directed panspermia, like life was sent here intentionally. That would be interesting. I don't know how you demonstrate that, but I don't see.
Well, you're right.
And the scientists that I've talked to about this, I don't know whether. So yes, I believe the current scientific findings about the age of the Earth and the early atmosphere about the Earth. I have no way of investigating them. I have no reason to think they're not true. But I also don't find it surprising that in 4.5 billion years, under viable conditions, life arose. I think it would be more surprising, given the vastness of the universe, to find out that this has only happened once.
It would be kind of surprising. I agree. But also space is very, very,
Yeah.
very big.
Yeah.
Yep.
Totally.
And it might have happened thousands of times, but the life didn't propagate. Billions of times maybe, and nothing happened. Maybe countless.
Well, we've got no way of knowing that, have we?
Not yet.
Because history was not written, or at least if it was written, then it was erased, so that we wouldn't know about it. But
Wait a
that's
minute.
a
What do you mean
different
it
story.
was written?
I totally agree
How
with what you just said
would it
there.
be written? I'm sorry, Chris. If we have no way of knowing it, who would have known it to write it?
Nobody did. Well, it might have been written, then it might have been deleted.
How do you know that?
Human beings have a bit of a habit of burning books, don't you know?
Yeah, but
People
given
that
what we
don't
understand,
want to know, people that
sorry,
don't
given
want
what we,
other people to know
I'm
their
sorry,
own history.
I know there's a delay. So given what we understand about human history, who can you think of in human history who would have had knowledge of the origin of life that then got deleted?
Iraq.
What?
Iraq,
Iraq?
sorry, in your, yeah. Why do you think?
What?
Why do you think when George W. Bush invaded Iraq, that the first thing the Iraqis did was go out and actually destroy their own heritage so that we wouldn't know what actually happened?
This is a really strange conspiracy theory. I mean, look.
Yes, yeah.
If you're suggesting that if you're suggesting like that, like
panspermia and chimpanzees
No,
and the fact that
let's
humans
finish and then
got a
we'll get back.
98%
Chris,
DNA match.
Chris, just stop.
Oh.
Let's finish.
I mean, look, if the claim is merely that like somehow the ancient Babylonians or the ancient Sumerians or something knew how life got here, well, it's not like the only way that they would have propagated that information forward is via statues or cuneiform. That idea would have spread to other civilizations and we would have seen their records too. It's not like it seems very implausible that the Iraqi people destroyed all of the evidence 25 years ago and nobody had seen it prior.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I believe the Aztecs and, Sumerians, that was the first language, unless I'm mistaken, is the Aztecs, Central Americans, Mayans. We don't understand their language fully. Egyptians, we're just barely understanding their hieroglyphic language.
I mean, that's ahistorical. Hieroglyphics were deciphered 150 years ago. I believe the Mayan language is completely understood.
From 2000
I'm
BC,
sorry, Chris.
If that's
Chris,
what holds
Chris,
the... Sorry,
Chris, I don't want to have to mute you, but I
no.
absolutely will if you don't stop talking over us.
All right, you carry on.
Thank you.
I mean, it's not that it was particularly relevant to the original question about panspermia, but it's just ahistorical to say that we don't understand hieroglyphics, or we barely do. They were deciphered 150 years ago or something like that. The Mayan language is, we can read it. I mean, I can't read it, but like various people who study it can read it. These are not undeciphered. I mean, there's a famous example of, it's like a Mycenaean language or something that we still can't read, but like that's one of the very few languages that we can't read. I don't know. This seems like it's verging on very, very close to the whole ancient alien stuff, which we don't really have any reason to believe is true.
Okay, yeah, very much. I totally understand you there. I've had a very good conversation with you tonight, and I'm going to wish you guys buena vida.
Okay.
You know, it's been great chatting to you guys, but I don't think we've got much to offer each other here.
Well,
okie dokie.
I guess if you think that, you're probably right.
Well, I hope I'm wrong. I was hoping I'm wrong. That's why I stood holding on the line for about an hour before I spoke to you. But well,
you've only been on the line for 26 minutes. Oh wait, you dropped and called back. Here's the thing. Instead of assuming that we don't have anything to offer each other, can we all agree that we do not have a solution to the origin of life on Earth specifically? Because I don't know.
No, yes, I totally agree with you. Yes, we can
Okay.
totally agree on
So
that.
if we
Nobody
don't
agrees
currently,
on
sure, Chris, if we don't
how
currently
life
have an
began
explanation,
on Earth.
if we don't currently have an explanation, what should we do about that?
Well, there's nothing we can do about it, and there's nothing that should be done about it. We're just merely here. We are surviving on this planet. We've got the time that we have to exist on this planet to do the best that we can, or to do the right thing, or what we believe to do the right thing. There's nothing that we have to do about it or should do about it.
Well, what I asked was
No,
what?
I was just, I was only,
Okay,
I wasn't
if we
asking
want,
this,
if we
these
want to
questions
find out,
in any expectancy
Chris,
that you would actually
Chris,
have any answers. I
hey,
just wanted
Chris,
to know what you were actually going to say.
Chris, it's
Hi.
like Chris can't
Hi.
hear me. It's like Chris can't hear me when I'm talking, which is a little disturbing. So instead of
Yeah, it
assuming,
works both ways though.
no, it doesn't work both ways
I'm
because you're on
listening.
my show and I'll talk over you whenever I want to. I just didn't want to have to mute you. Here's the thing. If we can agree that
Rosie didn't
I'm
do that
sorry,
again. You've done
I'm
that
sorry, I'm
twice to
still
me already.
talking, Chris. Chris, you don't want to learn anything, do you?
I do. I want to learn.
Okay, then stop
do want
talking
to
and
learn.
listen. Then stop talking and listen for a second. If we can agree that we don't currently have an
Well, there's a
explanation.
glitch.
Oh, there you go. You can't stop talking even for me to finish a sentence and a half. All right. If we can agree that we don't currently have an explanation for the origin of life on Earth, I don't know that we can agree that there's nothing we can do about it. Like, for example, there are plenty of people who've been studying abiogenesis within chemistry. And there are, plenty of things that are, we at least ways in which we could direct our research in the hopes of getting closer to a better answer. If you're only going to accept an answer if we develop a time machine and figure out how to go back in time to see it happen, I don't think that's possible. And I might be the only one in the room that thinks that. Who knows? Because Blitz and I haven't got into time travel yet. But why is it that you're convinced? And I'm going to conflate two things here, and I'm sorry, but I'm pointing out something that seems to be duplicitous in what you're saying, and I don't mean that in dishonest. I mean you're reaching two conclusions. One is that we can't find out how life began, and the other one is that it's possible that some ancient peoples knew. Those two things are in conflict with me because I have no reason to think that it's possible or plausible that ancient people knew, and I have no reason to think it's impossible for us to find out. So how do you reach those two conclusions? What's the justification for thinking one is possible and the other one's not?
Okay, that's a very good couple of questions you got there. I do believe it's possible that ancient humans have had existence on the planet which are much more advanced technologically than what we have now. Otherwise, how can you explain the pyramids? It's not just about some building
pyramids
blocks piled on
the
top of
pyramids
each
don't
other made
require
into
any
a pyramid.
technology we don't possess now.
Right.
In
You're
fact, we know
interrupting me now. I was actually trying to
we
answer.
know one of the names of the guys who helped build the pyramids, and he was very much human.
You're gonna go Tutankhamun or something.
No, Mirror. Mirror was a foreman for a construction crew involved in building the Great Pyramid. We have his
how
diary.
did they physically do it then?
With sleds and with sleds and rafts to get the rocks there, or to get the stones there, and then with ramps and with ramps generally, to ramps and levers to get them up the pyramid.
There's people who have replicated this with a single person moving stones the size of what's in the pyramid. And when you have a civilization with countless workers and slaves, it becomes even easier.
Yeah, okay. Apparently the Egyptians used to pay their slaves in beer and bread. No,
I don't know what that has to do with what I just said. It seems like we called out your nonsense and you decided to talk about beer and bread. So I'm still waiting for the answer of why do you believe it's possible that ancient people knew about abiogenesis, but modern people can't?
Because ancient people could not have possibly known about the mathematics, about the solar system, about the galaxies, the mathematics behind exactly where the pyramids are built, the amount of stones that there are to actually build them. There's just so many other things to consider other than people piling bloody stone blocks on top of each other.
Who do you think invented fractions?
From what Sorry, say again, please.
Who do you think invented fractions?
Who do I think invented fractions? Well, I don't think anyone invented them. I think possibly the person that might have discovered them and exploited them was possibly Socrates or Artemis.
No, it was the ancient Egyptians. The ancient Egyptians were the first to describe how to add and subtract fractions and how to do arithmetic with them. So they knew the math that you need.
Okay.
You don't really need sophisticated mathematics to build a pyramid.
If you say so, I'll go with it if that's what you say. Yeah, I'm willing to accept that.
It doesn't require much to build a pyramid. It's literally the easiest shape to build.
Well, a pyramid, yeah, definitely. I mean, all you ought to do is take a salt cellar and tip it upside down on a table, and what shape does it go into? Well, it goes into a round kind of cone shape. It's fat at the bottom and it's skinny at the top.
Yes.
So that is the most structurally sound, stable thing. Structure.
And do you think
on this planet
do you think
anyway?
Do you think people who grew up in a desert with sand dunes and playing with sand and seeing how that maybe they might have been inspired to replicate that shape? I'm not talking about the just the artistic aspect of it. I'm still trying to find out why you think it's possible that they had ancient knowledge that we can't have, and you're just saying, oh, they couldn't have known about this, and yet they absolutely could have and did.
Well, the reason being is because from what I've seen from these pyramids, the insides of them, that it would be almost impossible for us in modern age women, modern age humans. Sorry, I'm not being sexist here. It would be almost an impossible feat for us to do that in these days. And how did they do that?
I find that a completely ridiculous statement.
Have you seen Burj Khalifa? Like, we don't build pyramids anymore because we can build way more impressive things. We can build a building. So keep in mind, narrow, tall things are much harder to build than fat, short things. Burj Khalifa is like what?
Okay, the Burj Khalifa,
4 times taller than the Great Pyramid, and it's also way narrower.
Oh, you're saying it hasn't stood the test of time. It's apples and oranges with regard to engineering, but why would you be surprised that a stack of rocks stood the test of time?
Because the pyramids are designed in such a way that they will. That's the way they fall. If things were to go a big earthquake, a big earth tremor, things would
it's like you didn't even listen to the question I asked. I said, why would it be surprising? No, you're not listening.
Not last as long as the pyramids,
like you're genuinely not even making an attempt to listen, Chris. I said, why would you be surprised no, you're not. And the fact that you're interrupting me again to tell me you're listening. I asked you, what question did I ask you then, Captain Listening?
Captain Listening.
Yep.
God damn. Right. But I can remember the one I asked you.
No. What question did I ask you, Chris? We're not moving on until you tell me what question I asked you.
You asked me about the Burj Khalifa.
No, I didn't.
Personally, I
asked you why you would be surprised. I asked you, why would you be surprised that a stack of rocks stood the test of time? You didn't answer that.
Because it already
Are you related to Philomena Kunk? Is this am I being punked?
Is this a bit? It has last 4,000 years. The Burj Khalifa has only gone for about, 50 years?
Chris,
less than that?
Chris, listen.
Hello.
Chris, listen very carefully to the question and write it down.
I'm listening very carefully.
No, you're fucking not. The question is,
why? Yes, I fucking am.
Okay, I'm going to mute you, you fucking non-listener, here we go. Try this again. The question is, I know how long the pyramid has lasted. The Burj Khalifa hasn't been around that long. It is a completely different engineering feat. You're commenting that one of them has lasted for thousands of years and the other one hasn't. And I asked you twice, and this is the final time I will ask you, why would you be surprised that the pyramids have lasted for thousands of years?
Are you still there? Or have you
What
cut me
question did
off?
I just ask you?
All right, I just got this big bleep. I just thought you'd
What
muted
question
me.
did I just
Okay,
ask you?
maybe because
What
the
question?
pyramids.
What question?
Wait.
What question?
Sorry,
What question? I'm going to mute you. We're now going to kindergarten mode. When you hear the beep, that means you'll be able to talk again. The question I asked you is, why would you be surprised that the pyramid has lasted for thousands of years? When you get back, I'd like you to tell me what question I asked you, and then I'd like you to answer it. And if you fail to do that, we're just going to move on.
All right, you're asking me why would I be surprised that the pyramids have lasted for this long? And I'll tell you how long they've lasted. According to the archaeologists, they're...
Okay, I'm going to mute you again. I didn't ask you how long they've lasted. You did a really good job of telling me what question I asked you, but I said you needed to tell me the question I asked you and then answer it. I didn't ask you how long they've lasted. Despite my better judgment, I'm going to give you one more chance to answer the question of why you would be surprised that they lasted thousands of years. And then I'll let Blitz decide whether or not we're done, because I have no more interest in carrying this on.
Your question was, why would I be surprised that they've lasted thousands of years? I would not, because the fact of the matter is I'm not surprised that they've lasted
you would
thousands
not
of
be
years.
surprised.
I'm not finished. I'm not finished. Please let me
finish.
finish.
The fuck you're not. The fuck you're not. Here's the thing. You used the longevity of the pyramids as if they were some sort of indicator of superior engineering compared to something that is much less short-lived. You brought up a completely irrelevant point. I have here a pair of glasses I'm wearing. They haven't been around as long as the building or the pyramid. Does that tell you anything at all about which one is a more significant feat of engineering? I would argue that perhaps not these glasses, but perhaps this pair of glasses might be a more significant feat of engineering, because these are progressive lenses that have 3 different prescriptions, ground, and this is something that I don't think the ancient Egyptians had any hope of doing. And so maybe this pair, and however, these glasses have only existed since like January.
Keep in mind, there's also plastic there, and plastic is a remarkable feat of engineering.
Yeah. And so you brought up that one lived longer, or one has existed longer than the other, as if that tells us anything about the engineering feat. It doesn't. That's what I was trying to get you to acknowledge, because I was asking, why would anybody be surprised that a stack of rocks has lasted? And there's no reason for them to be surprised. And it's not relevant to whether or not it's a bigger feat of engineering. Also, it doesn't tell us anything at all about whether or not those ancient people were capable, had the technological capability to create that. And we know, with as much confidence as we can know about anything about the past, that they absolutely did.
Hello.
You're back.
I'm back. Are you?
Yes, I'm the one that said you're back.
Okay, well, you're back as well then. Okay, brilliant. Sorry, I think you just cut out of me again there. Look,
No,
I didn't mean to be
and so we're back to my
on.
question. We're back to my question, which is, why do you believe it's possible that ancient people had knowledge that you think is impossible for us to have now?
Well, apart from the engineering feat, in the middle of a desert, in the middle of a sand desert, how the hell would you get 6 million blocks or 6 million tons of blocks into a sandy desert, precise perfectly, right in the middle, with the cardinal points, north, south, east, west, and also it's exactly right in the middle of the landmass. Now, not only that, but the amount of
It's not
blocks
in the
that are
middle of the
actually
landmass,
used,
by the way. But okay.
Sorry, what did you say before you said by the way?
I said it's not central to the world. It's not in the middle of the landmass. It's also not perfectly oriented north, south, east, and west. It is oriented pretty well with the North Star because they could see the sky at night. And if you want to talk about how they got the large stones from far away to the location that they wanted it to be in, we know exactly how they did that because we have the diary of a man who was in charge of a team that was responsible for doing that.
Do you?
Yeah, it's called the Diary of Mirror. It was discovered in 2014. Yeah.
For doing it. And who exactly was responsible for doing it? Do you mind if I ask?
His name was Mirror, M-E-R-E-R. It was a logbook that he wrote. This was founded. Yeah, it was found in 2013, and he describes his work team. No, this is
Correct,
this
not
was like
Moses.
a real person.
Yeah,
he describes in his diary how they're hauling the rocks from the quarry location up the river onto the barge up the river. Like we have this record.
So you mean to tell me that you've got some kind of record by some guy called Mirror that has made a diary of exactly how he built the pyramids, even although on the mainstream news and everything else, nobody's got any bloody idea whatsoever of how the pyramids were made or why or anything else, but you seem to have this information.
No, sir. It's not just us that have this information. It's literally on Wikipedia and has been since 2013.
Well,
the Diary of Mirror.
I don't have Wikipedia.
You don't have internet access?
I don't. I've got internet access, but
then you have access to Wikipedia. You lazy non-researcher. It's the Diary of Mirror was founded.
I just believe my TV runs on.
No. It's absolutely the case that you are a lazy individual that didn't bother to research this. If you think that you have internet access, but you haven't even bothered to check Wikipedia,
I've researched it. I have researched it.
No, you haven't researched it. You're not qualified to research. You don't even know what research is, and you didn't even bother to check Wikipedia, which is the first place.
No, that's not fair. That is not fair.
It is fair.
You say that, okay?
I'm going to mute you now because I'm tired of you whining about whether or not we're fair. We've listened to this nonsense, and we've let you continually misrepresent the facts of reality, only to then interrupt and correct them. I'm sorry, but you think that it's possible that ancient people had knowledge that we no longer have. I don't know what your justification is for that, despite asking multiple times. I'm sorry, but you don't think it's possible for us to know how life formed on Earth, but somehow you think those ancient people did, and then they hid it when George W. Bush was heading into Iraq, as if nobody could know this before. You think that nobody's ever heard of the Diary of Mirror that Blitz is talking about, even though it was discovered in 2013. There's entire articles about it. There are scientific articles about it. There are historical articles about it. There's references on Wikipedia that are cross-referenced with the original sources. And you don't even realize that if you have internet access, you have access to Wikipedia and countless other things. And yet you think you've done your own research. You are a walking, talking demonstration of what, when people say, I've researched this, what they mean is, I might have done a Google search and gotten lazy after the first two results. I might have watched a YouTube video where somebody made a bunch of claims about a subject I don't know anything about, and I just took their word for it when they said the pyramid points perfectly to the cardinal directions and is centered in this. All of these things that are demonstrably false, measurably false. I've literally been and stood on the Great Pyramid of Giza.
Back when it was legal.
Yes.
I imagine.
Yes. I was there in 1990-ish, where you could get right up there and stand against the front rows and see the Sphinx and everything else. But I could have set a compass down. But, not that that's going to get you exactly what you need to know anyway. But it's bizarre that I grew up fascinated with the Great Pyramid. And all of the woo surrounding it, and there's a burial chamber, and there's a secret burial chamber, and this was done where a rock comes down and slides in to trap tomb robbers, and it all aligns with this, and there's some mystical reference, and somewhere there's probably a keyhole that you can see through that points directly to this stellar identity, and at some point it's going to open a, this is how we get to Indiana Jones, and wow, that's really fun. It's not science, and it's not real or true. So, Chris, I'm going to unmute you now. You'll hear a beep.
Okay,
now
yeah,
that the beep's over, and now that the beep's over, and now that the beep's over, and now that the beep's over, Chris, I'm going to give you your last word.
Okay. Viva Indiana Jones. Okay, I totally believe what you just said there. Oh no, that was Star Wars, wasn't it?
Never mind. That's enough last words from Chris. All right.
Hey, before we move on, could I do some announcements for LineCon and all that good stuff?
You can absolutely do all of that, wonderful, brilliant, sexy producer lady.
Thank you so much. All right. So everyone, if you have been a part of the the Line community, or if you're new, an event that we do for our patrons is something that we call LineCon, where it is basically a couple hours long, but the first half is 3 of our hosts here on the line, who all have all these amazing specialties, will give like a 20-minute talk like you would see at a convention or something. And so we have 2 coming up this weekend. Normally we do 1 a month for our patrons, but we've got 2 coming up this weekend. So give me 1 second while I get those graphics on the screen.
If you're coming to the Friday one, bring rubber bands.
There you go. Bring rubber bands if you're going to do maths. Okay. So this Friday, April 17th at 5 p.m. Central Time, Matt is going to be doing the first one on magic and skepticism. Then Sarah from Leaving Faith will be doing one on deconstruction in the nervous system. And Eric from Skeptics and Scoundrels will be doing one on what is and what isn't a cult. And then the next day, Saturday, April 18th at 3 p.m. Central Time, Alyssa Lube will be kicking us off with sex in media. Dr. Ben will be doing a talk on how to think like a doctor. And it says Eric from Skeptics and Scoundrels, but it should say Seth Andrews is doing one on Jefferson's Jesus. So anyone who is of the $15 and up tier gets access to these events, and they will get posted to the rest of the patrons after of the lower tiers. So if you want to go support us on patreon.com/calltheline, that is the best way to support the line, and it gets you access to these cool events. So check them out. Stick around.
Yeah, I noticed the typo. I was like, wow, Seth's really, has he changed his name, or has Eric let himself go downhill over between Friday and Saturday?
Nope. Just a mistake when you're trying to make a bunch of graphics really fast. Yep.
All right. We've got callers, and we always put Theo's callers first. And this one I'm incredibly excited about, actually taking Martin, pronouns to him as a theist calling from India, that says Vishnu said there's a way out of samsara. Hey, Martin, welcome to the show. You're on with Dr. Blitz and myself.
Hello, Matt. Hello, Blitz.
Hello.
Hi.
I would like to tell you what Vishnu said a long time ago.
Okay.
Okie dokie.
Yellow diamonds in the sky, and we're standing side by side. As your shadow crosses mine, what it takes to come alive. It's the way I'm feeling, I just can't deny, but I've got to let it go. That is the quote.
It's Yellow Diamonds, what?
This is a Rihanna
Yellow
song.
diamond in the light.
This is a Rihanna song.
Okay. So you're a prank caller. Good job.
Not at all.
Not so?
Not at all, yes.
Okay. Why are you reading lyrics from a Rihanna song?
Because we found love in a hopeless place.
Okay. Nice try, Martin. Do you have anything to say that's not just a prank call wasting our time? Because you waited on hold for 34 minutes to get busted instantly. Are you even a theist? Do you care to tell the truth about anything? You know what? I don't care. Bye. What a waste. What an actual waste.
Now, just before people think I'm cooler than I am, I had no idea that that was Rihanna, but it sounded like lyrics to a song, so I Googled it really
Yes.
quick.
I was actually typing in and Googling it as well because like I almost didn't even let him tell me what Vishnu said, because the first questions that I wrote down were, how do you know Vishnu said this? And why does it matter that Vishnu says it? Why would I care what Vishnu says? Those are the questions that pop into my head
Sure.
instantly. So when we're teaching kind of, how to be skeptical of claims, people are like, let me tell you what Jesus said. Okay. I don't know why I should care what Jesus said, but I also don't know how you know what Jesus said. I know you have reports about what Jesus supposedly said, but I'm not even convinced that you have, and you can do the same for Vishnu and everybody else.
Yeah.
But I decided I'd just listen to what he said. And when it rhymed in
Yep,
English,
that's what did it for me.
I was like, hang on. Why would an
Why is
Indian...
Vishnu speaking English?
Yeah, that's pretty good. What does God need with the starship? Because we found love in a hopeless place. Well, that's nice. Thank you so much, Martin. Ooh, we'll have a call specifically more for Blitz in a minute. But Kyle's a DS caller from Wisconsin, pronouns are he, him, wants to talk about morality and whether or not it's subjective or objective. Hey, Kyle, how are you?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Not too bad.
Doing okay.
All right. First of all, this is my, I think, third time being connected. I haven't talked to Blitz before, so nice to meet you.
Likewise.
I did kind of want to talk on something that I was hearing earlier. I think his name was Marin, the guy with the diary for the pyramids.
Mirror, MERER.
Mirror. Okay. So like, I genuinely am asking, how is that different than the Bible?
Well, we can date it. It dates to the time period of the pyramids, right? Like we can date this. And also it explicitly mentions the pyramids. Explicitly mentions it by name in the like by the Egyptian name. So, I mean, look, we found a document. I say we, the archaeologists found a document it's clearly old. You can figure out how old it is by like carbon dating, and we can go figure out what exactly they did. It's written in ancient hieroglyphics. It specifically mentions the pyramids. So like, I guess somebody from 4,500 years ago who wasn't working on the pyramids could have just been lying when they were writing down a story about how the pyramids were constructed. But the more plausible thing is that this was just the logbook of a guy who was responsible for helping construct the pyramids.
It's also different from the Bible in that it's not making any supernatural claims. It's making relatively mundane claims, and nobody's expected. Like, for example, Mirror may have been writing fanfic about the picture about the pyramids shortly after they're constructed, or he could have been telling the truth. It doesn't matter to me, other than this appears to be a chronicling of normative events, and the default is to just generally accept that's what's happened. As soon as somebody tells me that I need to follow the writings of Mirror and live my life according to them and donate 20% of my income to the Church of Mirror, then it becomes closer to the Bible.
So I did just
Okay.
double check because I wasn't sure off the top of my head. They didn't actually use carbon dating because with internal references of the text itself, you can actually get a more accurate dating than carbon dating would get you. Carbon dating would get you plus or minus 50 years or so. But the Diary of Mirror specifically mentions which part of Khufu's reign this was being written in. And so we can actually know what year it happened because it says what year it happened in.
Okay, love that. Okay. No, it was like a visceral reaction. I was like, wait a second. But yeah, that totally makes sense. I appreciate it.
Sure. What else you got?
So yeah, I guess we can move on to my reason for calling. I've listened to the show for a couple of years now, and there's a lot of times the morals come up in topic, and it seems like it's hard to deny that there's an objective morality, but it seems like the hosts don't really want to define it as objective.
Why would it be hard to deny that there's an objective morality? I literally have done it for 20 years.
I think that there's right and wrong, and specifically by Forrest's definition, which I love, it's basically whatever moves humans forward in the best way possible is the best moral compass. And
why is that the objective standard? I agree that once we have a standard, a goal, we can make non-subjective assessments. We can make it's just like, in chess, you can make objective assessments about whether or not a particular move moves you towards your goal or away from your goal. But the issue here about morality is, what is the goal? Why is it objectively the case, in your opinion, that moving humans in a particular direction is the objective actual goal of morality?
Well, that's how we define the word morality in the first place, right? Unless there's a different definition. It's just human nature to make decisions based off what they think
human nature is to
and
propagate and breed irrespective of consent. Does that have anything to do with morality?
I guess not.
Why would human nature, what we naturally do, be an objective standard for morality in any case?
Because whether there's intent behind it or not, I feel like everything affects other people. Everything you do affects other people.
Why does that matter? What is your objective foundation for claiming that it matters what happens to other people?
Okay. Didn't expect it to turn that direction. I thought it was kind of assumed that everyone wants.
Yeah, I don't assume things,
prosperity.
and I don't assume that everyone wants the same thing, because they don't. And I don't assume that just because everyone wants the same thing, that means it's good or better for us.
Look, so maybe I can help by reframing this just in a way that seems more intuitive. Suppose for a moment that it were the case that everybody's favorite color was blue. Everybody on Earth, throughout all of human history, everybody's favorite color was blue. Would that make it objectively true that blue is the best color?
Yes.
So there would be some fact of the world that makes blue somehow good or valuable that just doesn't depend on what people prefer?
Well, if it has 100% rate of success, then there's no outliers, so it's not subjective, right?
No. So, okay, so that I see where the confusion is now, which is why I brought up the example. So there's a difference between objective and subjective, and universal and particular. So objective means that there is some fact of the universe that makes something the case. It doesn't depend on people. It doesn't depend on minds. It's just a fact of the universe. Subjective means whatever this fact is, it depends on minds existing for that fact to be true. Then there's universal, which means it applies to everything for which it's applicable. So if we're talking about preferences, then we could say that a preference is universal if everything that has preferences has this particular kind of preference. And then we could say that something is particular, meaning that, it varies from, say, place to place or person to person. So what can be true is you can have a universal subjective fact. You could have a particular objective fact, meaning like, the strength of gravity is this here, but it's that there. That would be a particular objective fact. Or you could have a universal subjective fact, like everybody's favorite color is blue. The important distinction here is whether or not the fact of the matter depends on people, or if it doesn't depend on people. In the case of morality, the case that Matt and I typically make, is that the moral preferences, even if they're universal, which arguably they're not, even if they were universal, it doesn't make it so that this is a fact of reality, but rather it's a fact about people and their minds. That's the difference between objective and subjective.
Right. And so reality would be, the prosperity of humans would be the most moral thing to go for, right?
If there were no people with preferences, would that still be true?
No, so that's why I'm talking about universal versus objective. I was wrong on the definition. I used the wrong term. So you corrected me on that. I appreciate it.
Okay, so it might very well be the case. I suspect it's not, but it might very well be the case that there is a universal drive towards, personal well-being or perhaps familial well-being or something like this. That might very well be the case, but it just doesn't make it objective. That's all.
Well, the other side of the coin is some people are going to have beliefs that hurt other people, and that's where we are nowadays. Because
So it's
we
not
don't
universal.
accept a universal morality.
Yeah. Yes. There's no reason to think there's now. I have no reason to think there's an objective moral right answer, but I don't even think there's a universal right answer amongst humans at this moment, let alone humans across time. Like once upon a time, there were probably more people who thought it was permissible to own people as property. The Bible advocates for it, for example. And now I would hope there are fewer people who agree with the idea that it's permissible, morally permissible to own people as property. And I think ideally for me, I'd like to get us to a point where nobody thinks that it's morally permissible to own people as property. That is my preference based on the moral foundations that I think lead to a better world. But there's no objective fact about the universe that dictates what a better world is or what foundational moral principle is the right one. And it couldn't matter less, in my view. I think people make morality far more complicated than it needs to be. I gave a talk for a while called The Superiority of Secular Morality, where I basically argued that you can start with 3 foundational premises that could be, let's start with death is preferable to life. If we start with that, we end pretty quickly. If we work towards that preference, we go extinct. So let's flip it and we'll go with life is preferable to death. We know that most people are going to agree with that, but there are periods of time where life is no longer preferable to death. I've had more than one friend, I'm sad and I guess kind of happy to say, ended their life on their own terms when they were faced with a terminal condition and they decided as rationally as they could that continuing to exist was no longer the moral option for them, even weighing in the loved ones around them and the people that would miss them and as many of those factors as they can. And so it's a difficult situation, but it couldn't matter less to me whether it's like, I would be scared if there was some kind of objective moral truth, because I don't think there's an absolute moral truth either. So in addition to universal in particular, and in addition to subjective and objective, there's also absolute and relative or situational. And I advocate for situational ethics that are rooted in an ill-defined subjective foundation of something akin to well-being. And from that, we can then consider the consequences of our actions and see if they move us closer to the goal that I've defined. And you know what's funny is the theists who get upset about this, they've never been able to raise any objection to the secular, subjective, situational, moral solution that I have that is in any way solved by appealing to their religion or their God. Because from my point of view, hey, from my frame of reference, which is, I'm just doing that to get a smirk, telling me what your God thinks might as well just be telling me what your opinion is, which doesn't make it any more valuable than mine. But even if your God, not you, Kyle, because I don't think you necessarily have a God, but even if somebody's God came down and said, hi, I'm God, I'm the God, and here's what I declare to be moral or immoral, that doesn't mean I have to agree with it. I don't know why his opinion's any more valuable than mine or yours.
I agree with that. I do agree with that.
And you are correct, as far as I can tell.
We define a morals, immoral actions, and we take action. We have criminals. We have a justice system because of that. It all revolves around morals. It's just a part of life, and so I think it affects everybody. So I don't know. I think having subjective morals is why there's so much hurt in the world.
Okay. I feel like we went backwards just there. Because now you're suggesting that a lack of objective moral foundation is what's wrong with the world, when not only do I not think there is, I don't think there could be an objective moral foundation, and I don't think that what's wrong with the world is that morals are subjective. I think what's partially wrong with the world is that two people can think they want what's best for the world, and even an initial conversation in shorthand describe things that are similar about their goals, but they have a fundamental different view of what the final outcome is and what actually makes it better. I think that's one difference. And I think the other difference is people will say, I want a better world, and even agree with you on what a better world looks like. But if it conflicts with their personal preferences and comfort, they will rationalize a reason not to move forward. Like, my favorite thing to cite on morals and ethics is Rawls' veil of ignorance, which is design the world you're going to live in without knowing who you will be. Does your world consider slavery to be moral? Remember, you might come in as a slave, or you might come in as a slave owner, or you might come in as a third party. Not knowing who you would be, would you want to live in a world where slavery is considered morally permissible? I would not. There may be some people who would. And there also may be some people who are willing to gamble in the hopes that they would be the one that would end up being the slave owner, because they recognize the disparity in the system. But for them personally, in the short term, it would be a better world. But in the long term, as long as we don't get myopic about it, it would definitely be the worst world, because that stalls progress. You know, that individual that you've enslaved and have out, cleaning your car might have been the individual that discovered a cure for cancer. We've discouraged education and learning in that system. Nobody needs smart slaves.
Okay.
But I think humanity is improved as we
it's ever
smarter.
improving, ever changing.
Well, I think smarter is the key. And I think we're getting, in many cases, measurably dumber. I've cited the statistic about 20 times since I heard it, but since we started tracking IQ and reading comprehension, every generation has outperformed the one before it until Gen Z, and they have underperformed on both of those.
And you know what that means? It means my generation's the smartest. Get wrecked, Gen Z.
My generation is the ignored one. I will let the boomers and the millennials fight, and I'll just sit back here and toke it up. Does that help out, Kyle?
Matt,
do we
you
answer
have a
that?
definition for morals?
So I don't this. I'm going to give me a second, because I'm going to clarify this. There are people who will try to discuss a difference between morals and ethics, and there's a number of different proposed models I've heard. I don't care what you call it. If somebody's definition of morality is whatever God wants, I don't care. If somebody's definition of morality is whatever is better for us, okay, then we agree. I don't think there's any, here's what morality is. I think as a nearly universal assessment, we tend to look at what we think is better for us and the people we care about. And we see the world through a little narrow slit, and with glasses that don't let us see far enough. So we care about ourselves first, our family second, our community next, et cetera. And we care less as it gets further away. Why do I care about, what's going on in Gaza? It's not, I can't do anything about, I do care. And I'm saying it's really easy to make those sorts of arguments. And in my day-to-day life, I have a lot going on. I had a near panic attack in the last 24 hours about a financial situation that has been resolved. But that was the single most important thing. Despite the fact that my dad is going through cancer treatment, that there are wars all around the world, that there's only have so many spoons that you can use to focus on different things. So it's not surprising that we do that. And the key, the think globally, act locally axiom is one, but design the kind of world you want to live in, not knowing who you're going to be. And the question I ask myself on morality is, if everybody were to take the action that I'm about to take in the situation that I'm in and for the reasons I'm taking it, would the world be better, worse, or the same? And if the world would be worse, it's a mistake for me to take that action. And if it would be the same, it might still be a mistake for me to take that action, but at least that's not as bad as making it worse.
Okay. I like your definition. I like that statement you just made. I'm not saying that's your definition. I agree with that wholeheartedly, and I'm stuck on the fact that if someone doesn't agree with that, if someone thinks that slavery is okay, obviously that pisses other people off, and including myself, I'm sure, including you. And so, like, how is our moral compass not more true than theirs?
Look,
it's not.
It does. I don't even know what the question means, right? Look, they have their values, their preferences, whatever they want. We have our values, our preferences, whatever. And at the end of the day, you can either try to come to an agreement based on mutually agreed upon, foundations, in which case you can have a reasonable discussion about what's right and wrong. Maybe you and I both agree that what's right is whatever moves humanity forward the farthest, right? Maybe that's what we agree upon. And then we can discuss, well, what's the correct line of action given that premise. But if we disagree on the starting premise, then you either learn to live together or you fight a war. Those are your options. There's not really anything that you can do about it. You can't say that one is more right than the other, because these are not things that have, in my view anyway, that even have truth value.
Yeah, I guess not.
Like, I mean, consider this. Suppose that there's a country of people, and in that country of people, the thing that they think is just to do is just sexually assault women, and then anytime an infant is born that is, more than the third infant born to a woman, they grind up that infant and turn it into a cheeseburger, right? If there's a country that does that, and they all think that it's totally okay, what are you going to do? Well, you could just ignore them, or you go fight a war because what they're doing is horrible, right? There's not really not really anything else besides that.
I think the key that I mentioned, the key point about what makes a secular moral system superior in practice is that religious moral systems have limited options. You either convert, or you are coerced, or you are conquered. That's how you change. That's how all the Christians can get all the Muslims to be Christians in their morality. Those are their options. The key difference with secular moral systems is, and the other problem with the religious ones is they tend to be static. The advantage of the secular moral systems is that, generally speaking, if they're good ones I'm advocating for, they have a goal of getting better at getting better, and they are open to revision, as is, scientific models and stuff like that. And the way that they are intending to change people, to get them to participate and agree, is through debate, data, and discussion, to say, okay, you and I want a better world. Is a better world one where people are healthy? I would think so. Is a better world one where people are educated? I would think so. Is a better world one where people aren't without a house and without funding to meet their basic needs? I would say yes. And so it may not be that the solution is universal basic income, universal healthcare, but those might be an option. on how to reach that goal. But that's about solving a problem. If we agree that that's the better world, then at a minimum, we can say that anything that impedes our progress towards those goals would be considered immoral. And if we can't get people to agree that impeding progress toward agreed upon goals is immoral, or let's just throw the word morality out, wrong, you know, you have a goal and somebody's working to impede it, that's wrong. If you don't agree with that, you are the one impeding our progress. And so I either don't work with you, I work with other people, or I fight like hell to make sure that I am at least free to continue working towards a good goal.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's no other real option, as Blitz mentioned, I guess. Not that I know of.
Well, I got a bunch of other callers to get to. I hope we offered you some help on the morality thing. Think about it some more, Kyle, and call back when you get other questions.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys' time. And my goal was to not get muted one time and stay on track the best I could. So let's go.
Cool. Congrats.
Nice.
And now I have hung up on you. That's hard to avoid on a show called The Hang Up, but
Yeah.
what are we going to do? Hey, we're already going to put Theus at the top of the queue. I want to remind people, we're going to be sitting around after the calls are over. We're going to read your super chats. All the super chats over $10. You get them in now. And so if you've got good questions for Blitz, or if you have questions for me, or if you want to know more about what's going on with LineCon and the speakers, get all that information in, and we will sit here and engage with those super chats afterwards. By the way, this is one of many, many, many shows here on this very Line network. If you click like, subscribe, if you click join, you're not just saying, yeah, that math guy sucks, but he gets good guests on. You're saying, hey, there are other good shows here, including the Transatlantic Call-In shows on Thursday afternoons, where we discuss trans rights and trans rights issues. Actually, not we, because I'm not there, but trans folks will tell you and answer your questions. In addition, there's Skeptalk on Mondays, Chewed Gum on Tuesdays, and 2 episodes of the Sunday Show on Sundays, where we talk about religion, any number of things. We are, and there's more coming. There's whole new shows getting ready to premiere. But in the meantime, we have a theist. Nathan's calling from Pennsylvania, pronouns are him, with questions about flat Earth and going into space. Hey, Nathan, you're on with Dr. Blitz and maybe me. How are you?
Hello, good evening. How are you guys doing? I'm doing good.
Pretty good.
Is this Nathan Thompson?
No, I don't know who that is. Different Nathan.
Okay, just checking.
Sorry. Is Nathan Thompson a very bad person?
He's a flat earther who also harasses children, so.
Oh, no. Well, that's the thing. I'm against the flat Earth thing. I really think it's a bunch of BS, honestly. It's just I have a friend who does believe in flat Earth, and the question that I was telling the call screener was, like, I know that flat Earth is not true. There's a bunch of evidence that obviously backs that up. But the one question that I do have is that I did see some videos. I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before, where I've seen astronauts in space, and we've seen, like, the green, like, where people who are reviewing the videos are seeing like there's a green screen behind them. I saw one astronaut like drop something and attempt to pick it up, and then like another astronaut catch him and tell him like, no, don't, just ignore it, play the bit, And so, like, I guess my question is are we even like really going into space? I mean, granted, I believe that we've been there, but for example, NASA, is NASA, trying to make it seem like, oh, we're there all the time? And is it just something that is like they're trying to portray out there that as if, oh, see, we go here all the time, we have astronauts there right now at the ISS. But then, like if you've seen the videos of, astronauts dropping stuff and, other things like that, it makes me question it about that. And then, and that to me, that kind of like ties into the flat Earth thing too. I don't buy it, but I mean, are they like conflicting with one another on those types of things where, the flat earthers can't, is that encouraging them to think that, oh, wait, we're not in space because they're using green screens and we're not in space? So I just want your guys' thoughts and opinions on that.
So all flat earthers think that all moon landings and all space stuff is fake because they think that space isn't real. With regards to the Artemis mission, people, flat earthers in particular, but moon landing deniers more generally, tend to scan through live streams and try to see if they can find anything that looks slightly off. Usually these are pretty easily explainable as transmission glitches generally. Because again, especially for the Artemis mission, these were live streams being transmitted over hundreds of thousands of miles. But the Artemis mission is arguably probably the easiest thing to verify that actually happened, because there were amateur astronomers, and in fact, really anybody could have done this if you spent a few $1,000s on a telescope, where you could go look up, according to NASA, where the Artemis or where the Orion space capsule was. And then you can point your telescope there and you could have seen it in the sky yourself. And there are a lot of amateur astronomers who recorded themselves doing this on YouTube. So that means that NASA at least put something in space, and it was where they said it would be. Now you could say, oh, well, maybe there weren't actually people there. Well, we saw the astronauts get in the rocket, and they definitely didn't leave the rocket. And that rocket is the thing that ended up being tracked by these amateur astronomers. So where were they? Did they teleport out of the rocket into a green screen room and then they just put up like a dummy into space? The conspiracy gets deeper and deeper, and it requires more and more far-fetched ideas, rather than just acknowledging that, yes, there are going to be transmission errors because you're transmitting over hundreds of thousands of miles. And second, a lot of these issues are either fake, like there's a claimed issue with like a green screen error, but that was actually a problem on CNN, which was rebroadcasting. They had their own issue that wasn't on the original stream, or these are nothing. So like there was a guy I spoke to on Monday, who made the claim that one of these guys gave his thumbs up half a second too early, but like that's how astronauts acknowledge that something was transmitted. So like you can explain why he gave that thumbs up. It's not necessarily because there wasn't a long delay. So this is all to say, if you have to nitpick to try to find evidence that this thing was fake, but then you just ignore all of the blatant evidence, like the literal astronomical evidence that you can see with your own eyes, then it seems like the more plausible explanation is just that they did go to space. There were astronauts orbiting, or that orbited the moon once. That's the most plausible option.
Yeah, and I'm not denying that happened. I mean, I completely believe that, we sent those guys to space. I'm not denying that at all. And I'm not, shilling for the flat earthers or anything, but it's just I've seen these videos. I've heard the people ask these questions about, denying that the earth is round and all that. And I wanted to ask somebody like a little bit more knowledgeable on the subject. And you guys seem like, I just happened to stumble upon the video, your stream. And so that's why I was wondering, I wanted to get a better perspective on like what, actual professional people who like dive their noses into these books and information and have a more broader, knowledge on the subject than I do, or my friend, for example, who is a flat Earth believer. But since we're talking about that, do you think that when we went to the moon the first time, do you think that we actually did go to space, or was that a ploy to just sort of have a pecker measuring contest against the Soviets? Like, do you think that actually happened? Or
yes, we went to space. We landed on the moon in July of 1969, and there are remnants of that lander still on the moon.
Right.
Why would anybody think that? Why would anybody think that it didn't happen? Here's the thing. Blitz is an incredibly well-educated individual. I'm not. And yet, here's what needs to happen. Like, the Artemis mission the other day, we watched astronauts get into there, and I suppose there could have been a magic trick where we smuggled them out through a secret door in the bottom, whatever else. But the rocket definitely was launched and tracked. And it was tracked for its entirety. And there are recordings of the mission. And it would make less sense to set up and it would be more difficult and make less sense to set up a fictional a scenario where the astronauts appear to be in space but aren't than it would be to just put them on the mission. Meanwhile, people were there watching the launch live. Amateur astronomers have been tracking it. This was a joint effort, not between the astronauts were from multiple countries, as is the case for the International Space Station and other things. And the number of people involved in getting those 4 astronauts to do an orbit around the moon and come back is staggering. How many people would have to be paid to lie about what they've dedicated their life to, about spending years studying engineering and doing all the math to figure out the exact right time and which launch times were viable, because there was an earlier launch time that they didn't use. So which launch time is viable? And then we get all this and we put together a rocket. What is the point in making a big lie about this? And how many people would have to be involved in that lie? And how much money would have to be involved in keeping that lie? And what's the purpose behind all of it? This is just, it's one thing to say, ooh, I find this unbelievable because I don't know enough. It's another thing to suggest that there's any viable path to a conspiracy of this magnitude. And that includes 1969. Why, if multiple nations were in a race to get there, why would the other nations stop if we hadn't actually gotten there? Did they just buy into it too? Did they not have spies that could have found out that Stanley Kubrick did it all on a soundstage or whatever the flat earthers are claiming now? You don't have to know anything about the scientific capabilities to know the limits of humans' ability to keep a secret on that kind of scale is laughable.
Not only that, there is like 100 pieces of evidence that confirm we went to the moon in 1969 through 1972. Like we have laser ranging experiments. We have moon rocks that were brought back. We have footage from the moon that we can analyze and determine that it only could have been, filmed in a place that's a vacuum with 1/6 Earth gravity. We have testimony. We have video. We have we have all sorts of pieces of data that all point to, yes, we went to the moon. And the pieces of data and the evidence that moon deniers and flat earthers point to is they're like, aha, but didn't you see that one time that Neil Armstrong that Neil Armstrong answered a little girl in a kind of simplified way? Like that's all they have. And we have like physical evidence.
Right. Okay. No, I mean, I was just sort of playing devil's advocate here, sort of asking these questions that I myself have been
that's fair.
Just wondering, like I've heard, and so that was it. So I mean, yeah. What if I can ask one more thing? Maybe you have heard of this. This is going to be maybe a little bit off topic. I think it does involve the flat earthers, but have you heard of a documentary? I forget who made it, but have you heard of a documentary called Old World Order?
Never heard of it.
Okay, yeah. Well, it's part of, I think it's also part of the flat earth thing where the earth isn't really that old. And the guy who made the documentary, I think you can look it up, but their claims, I should say, is that if you, what's your closest city that you live in? Like your downtown, what's the biggest city that you live in right now? I guess
Austin.
Pick one.
Phoenix.
Austin. Okay, Austin. All right, so like Austin, Texas, your state capitol building, all right, or a courthouse, that was built maybe 100+ years ago. All right,
hey.
These guys claim that those buildings and any building that are similar to that, like in New York City, in California, Texas, wherever, that those buildings are actually made prior to when the English sailed over and colonized, the 13 colonies. They're claiming that there was some sort of.
I don't want to be particularly rude, Nathan.
These buildings were already there when the settlers were moving in, and somehow I can't remember fully if it tied in with flat earthers, but just your thoughts on it. If you've ever
Yeah,
heard
Nathan?
that, that's my, yeah.
Well, it's a 2024 documentary that I'm grateful I'd never heard of. I don't want to be rude, but I have zero time to
Yeah.
waste on things that are quite that stupid.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the other thing. My friend had heard of that too, and I looked it up, and I was like, are these people being serious? And I thought it was maybe like a joke in, communities.
I don't know how to
like
tell
in
anymore.
your guys' field.
I'm sorry to
That's what I
tell
was
you
just
this, but your
wondering. I don't
friend
know.
might be very dumb.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's really out there, and like, I'm pretty sure you've heard the stories like mountain faces are actually giants that are petrified. Like he's down that hole. Like he's gone
Look,
really
it's
down
okay.
the rabbit hole, and I'm
It's
like,
so first, lest I come off as ableist, it's okay to be dumb. Half the world's population is dumb, and that's fine. Not everybody has to be super well informed on archaeology and astrobiology or whatever. You don't have to be knowledgeable or capable of considering those things. But like, your friend just might not be the right person to go to when it comes to figuring out how the world works.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to him. It's just he's telling me this stuff because he knows that I'm interested in a variety of things. Like I love history, for example, but he's always he brings it up to me, and I'm like, dude, this sounds way out there. Like this sounds too crazy. And he sends me like a gaggle of Instagram videos of flat earthers and God knows what else, and I'm just like, is this even legit? Is this even real? Like, this has got to be a joke, and that's why
unfortunately
I felt like I had
not.
to ask somebody, like, what are your guys' thoughts on this? Really?
Unfortunately, it's not a joke. A poll that was taken, I don't know, like 5 years ago or something like this, showed that about 10% of the American population thinks that the Earth is not a globe. A much larger percentage thinks that the moon landings in the 60s and 70s didn't happen. It just turns out that with the propagation of social media, lest I call them the dumb people who who are willing to believe these kinds of things and be caught up in these conspiracy theories, have found each other and are now, convincing each other and spreading these kinds of things. It used to be before the internet. If you might be the kind of person that is susceptible to this kind of thing, but unless you run into someone in person who spreads these kinds of things, you just would never think about them. Like, if it was 1975 and you lived in a small town in, I don't know, Kansas, unless you had a local moon landing denier, you would just believe that the moon landing happened. Yeah. Even if you were susceptible to it.
Yeah. What's happened is the internet has made it so that the handful of people who would listen to Art Bell and buy into all kinds of nonsense now have their own fancy web pages and media production that makes it put them on par with other reputable sources. We've reached a sort of, like I'm not doing this in 4K right now, but I've got a 4K camera that can, with the studio equipment, I could make a studio here that looks just as good as CNN. And it doesn't mean that I'm any more reliable. I am actually more reliable than CNN, but the issue here is that, like, I know the documentary you're talking about probably didn't refer to the actual Austin Capitol, and so I already feel like I wasted time going to look this up. But we have photographs of the construction of the Capitol building in Austin because it was built 138 years ago, and photography's been around for about 200 years. So we have literal photographs of the construction of the building. Now, most, I guess they could say that everything that is pre-photography somebody made up, but that means that 200 years ago or so, people stopped making things up, and people within like living memory of people within living memory should have known about this history that was invented. And why would the Capitol? And I'm done. I am not going down this particular ridiculous rabbit hole. Not everybody who makes a documentary is worth paying any attention to.
Right. No, I didn't know. I didn't mean to offend or anything. I'm just, I figured I'd bring it up thinking like, what is your thoughts about this and all that? That was it.
I don't think
'Cause
there's any good reason to believe that that stuff is true, and plenty of good reasons to think it's false.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess it could be used as a good laugh, to be like, this is stupid.
Once upon a time, I would have said, yeah, let's have a good laugh about it. Just like I used to enjoy The Onion in its early days, and now I despise The Onion and everything like it because it's led to an online presence where people who weren't equipped to have a good laugh and who haven't been given the skills to critically evaluate things are buying into it. And those people vote and make decisions about my life, and that terrifies me.
Right. Yeah, gotcha.
Thanks,
All right,
Nathan.
well,
I got to move on.
Take up more of your time, and you guys have a good one, all right? Take it easy.
Yep,
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Arden wants to come back in because we got LineCon this weekend, and you have announcements about it.
That is correct. Give me 1 second and I'll get all that stuff up again. So for those of you who are just joining the stream, once a month here on the line, we do an event called LineCon, where 3 of our amazing hosts here will give a 20-minute presentation on a topic of their interest. And this isn't necessarily limited to the stuff we normally talk about on these shows, as I think a lot of our hosts have a wide breadth of skills and specialties that they don't always get to dig into on the shows. And this is an opportunity where they get to do that. So if you want to go over to patreon.com/calltheline, you can watch this month's LineCon, which will feature Friday, April 17th at 5 p.m. Matt, Sarah, and Eric. And Matt will be doing magic and skepticism. Sarah from Leaving Faith will be talking about deconstruction in the nervous system. And Eric from Skeptics and Scoundrels will be talking about what is and isn't a cult. Alyssa Lube will be and on Saturday, April 18th at 3 p.m. Central Time, Alyssa Lube will be kicking us off with a talk on sex and media. Dr. Ben will be talking about how to think like a doctor. And while I know it says Eric SNS again, that is in fact Seth Andrews who will be doing that third talk on Saturday about Jefferson's Jesus. So that is available to anyone with a... Ooh, sorry, dog scratching her collar there. That will be available to any of our patrons from the $15 and up tier. We'll be able to watch the event live, and any of the lower tiers will be able to tune in after the fact of the live recording. Patreon.com/calltheline. Thanks. Oh my God, she's being so loud at the worst timing.
My cat is currently screaming at the door, so.
That's fair. All right, let's see if we can make the animals a little happier. Okay, here's a topic. Mitch is pronounced he, him, calling in from Michigan, is an atheist that wants to talk about conservatism's future of finding love. Hey, Mitch, how are you?
Howdy.
I'm doing good.
I'm gonna short circuit part of this by saying I hope conservative men never find love, but that's just a personal bitterness on my part. But how can we help with the issue that you're having?
Well, your wish is being fulfilled wholly.
Yes, let's go.
No,
I take it you're a conservative person who's having trouble finding love.
Yes.
So, Mitch, just as a simple piece of advice, clearly you understand that the demographics are that women tend to be more liberal, more left-leaning, right? This is like well-known phenomenon. Women overwhelmingly, if I remember correctly, voted for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris as well. Whereas it's men who tend to be more conservative. People also like to be in relationships with people that share ideology, with people that share morals, worldviews, etc. So if your goal is to find a person to have a relationship with, perhaps adjust your way of thinking so that they are more interested in having a relationship with you.
Wait, ask that again?
It wasn't a question, it was advice. Adjust your way of thinking about the world so that the people who you want a relationship with are more likely to want a relationship with you.
I can easily do that. Why do I have to change my way of thinking?
You don't have to, but you're the one who wants love.
Yeah, it's like, let's say that your view is that it's okay to punch people in the face and people don't want to hang out with you because you think it's okay to punch people in the face, all Blitz is saying, maybe consider changing your view on punching people in the face, and that'll make people want to hang out with you. And nobody's saying you have to change your view. It's just a condition of getting other people to want to hang out with you. I don't have any interest in hanging out with people who want to deny basic human rights to my friends and to me. I don't know what you mean.
I'm on board.
I'm sorry, Mitch, just for clarity, because people will identify as conservative and they don't necessarily say what they mean. I don't know what your positions are. I don't know what's keeping someone from finding you, but just out of curiosity, do you think it's a choice whether or not somebody's gay?
Haven't thought about it. I've had gay friends. I don't think it's a choice. I think it's
okay,
just
cool.
who they
I was
are,
going to
and they're
say,
just-
no, that's fine. I was going to say, if you think it's a choice, then maybe you should just try to choose to be gay, because there's plenty of conservative dudes for you to interact with. But since you don't think it's a choice, now we got to work on the next thing. What is it you're looking for in a partner?
looking for somebody that wants to be a wife.
Okay.
What does that mean to you?
Somebody that wants to be with me, to want to have a family with me, somebody that wants to focus on me and her building a life and a tree together.
Well, so
Family
look,
tree.
if you're, so for example, if you want, and I'm not saying this is you, but if your interest was you are looking for somebody who's willing to, cook and do the dishes and rear the children, then your pool of people who want that will be smaller. But if you're looking for somebody to be a partner in life with, you're okay with them working, you're okay, splitting the house chores or whatever, your pool will be probably a bit wider. So, I mean, look, I'm not saying either one is what you're looking for. I'm just saying, like, if your goal is to find somebody who shares certain desires with you, you just have to think about how common is it for somebody, I imagine, of the opposite sex actually has those same goals.
It's crazy. I hear that women want those goals, but God damn it, they don't. They sure as hell don't show it.
You mean to like work and be a partner, or to like be interested in like being a housewife?
Like being a wife.
I'm sorry. I think we're back to Blitz's question. Like when he asked you what it meant to be a wife, you basically went down a focus on the family route. In your mind, is a wife an autonomous person that works and lives their own life in addition to focusing on you and the family?
No, I just want a wife. I saw what my dad had. My dad
Okay,
was my
that's
dad.
literally
and
not
his-
even the beginnings of an answer to my question. So when you say a wife, does that person work? Like have a
if
career?
need be.
Okay, so
I mean,
this
my
person can
mom
have
worked.
okay, so this person can have a career. Can they have interests and
No,
friends
not
outside
career,
of you?
just work. You have
Oh,
to
not
go and make money.
so they can't have a career. They can just work.
What? Yeah, they can just work. Of course,
But not
you
have
to
a
work.
career. But not have a career.
Yeah, you can work and not have a career. Yeah.
Yeah, but I
That's what
know it's
most people
possible.
do.
I know it's possible to work and not have a career, Mitch. Some might say I do it. I'm saying you are saying that in order to be eligible to be a wife for you, they cannot have a career, but they can work.
You can have either or.
Mitch, I don't know what's so difficult about this. I'm asking you what you mean by your wife. Is your wife allowed to have a career, yes or no?
Yeah.
Okay. Are they allowed to not want to have kids?
No.
Okay. So you've narrowed the field, and I'm sure there are women out there who want to have kids and would like a career. What other requirements are you looking for?
Virginity.
That'll do it.
Since virginity isn't a real thing, I think you're going to struggle there.
You're right. That's where I'm struggling. It's like
Well,
it's
no.
a thing that's
I'm-
dead.
No. Virginity is not a real concept. I mean, it is a concept. It is not a real thing. There is no such thing as virginity. This notion of sexual purity does not exist. How would you tell if a woman is a virgin, and tell me why it matters to you?
I cannot perfectly tell, and it matters to me because she is saving herself for her husband.
Why is that something of value?
It's a value to me because it tells me she wants to have children with me, and we can grow our children together.
Yeah, but
I just want to.
Oh, go ahead.
I want to
Bill,
double
sorry.
check. Are you a virgin?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, look, you can have this view that you want to be the first and last person that somebody has sex with. Like if that's what you want, fine. You just have to recognize that that's going to narrow your playing field significantly.
Yeah, I'm very well aware of that.
So, I mean, look, like if you're concerned that you will not meet someone, there are two options. You can either recognize and, submit to the fact that it might be the case that you will not meet somebody, say in time in order to have a family, or you have to open up your options a little bit. Those are like your two options.
You are correct.
Okay. So I think what it is that somehow or another, and you're allowed to have whatever preferences you want. You could say, I'm only interested in a woman that is between the ages of 18 and 24, who's never had a sexual thought, doesn't dye their hair, doesn't have tattoos. You can make whatever standards, but every time you do that, you are decreasing the available pool, and you seem to be doing so for reasons that, well, I mean, I don't get. Like, for example, I don't care whether or not my partner has had sex before.
And most men don't care. But
Yeah,
there's
and
some
I'm
that
trying
do.
to figure out why. I'm trying to figure out why somebody would care.
It's an emotional feeling.
Yeah, okay. I'm genuinely just trying to understand
do guys
why.
care if their woman have been with 60 dudes? Do they care about that? Or no, I don't care
really,
about 60 dudes.
I mean, the thing is I'm not really in that situation. My wife and I met when we were 18 and we've been together ever since. So like, I didn't have to confront that possibility. If that was something that would bother me down the line, I don't know. Because I was never put in that situation, but like, some people might care. If that bothers you, just recognize that is narrowing your playing field, and like you just have to deal with that.
I still kind of want to know. I mean, and I'm asking. So
let's say you met your wife when she was 18. Let's say before that she's been with 60 dudes. Would that change your opinion on your wife or not?
I don't think it would bother me personally, but it would also be a little bit weird because like that means that she was like a young teenager doing this, and that would probably make us be like different people if that was the kind of person that she was. Because you only have so much time before you're 18, right? But this is just to say, like, I just didn't have to confront that. Whether or not that actually would have bothered me, I don't know, but I didn't have to deal with it.
Yeah, Blitz is right that if this is your preference, you just have to realize it's narrowing the field. I'm just trying to understand the preference. I'm just trying to understand the preference because if somebody had sex with 60 guys, and by the way, I want to point out that nobody's talking about how many women the dudes had sex with here, but if somebody's had sex with 60 guys
0.
and somebody's had sex with 1 guys and somebody's had sex with 0 guys, do you put the person who has had sex with 1 guy and the person who has had sex with 60 guys in the same category?
Of course not. Completely different category.
No, that's so weird. That's so weird, Mitch, because you say, of course not. What makes them, what is different about the person that has had sex with 60 guys from the person that had sex with 1 guy? What's the difference?
A whole lot of different semen exchange.
Okay. So it's funny that you threw in the lap and everything, a whole bunch of different semen exchange. First of all, you don't know that that's the case, and second of all, that doesn't answer the question.
You just said
What?
that.
I'm sorry.
Just said that's the
I'm sorry.
example.
I'm sorry. I'm still trying to get to the question, which is, if somebody's had exchanged bodily fluids with 60 people, what does that mean about them compared to the person that's had exchanged bodily fluids with 2 people? What's the difference?
The volume.
But okay, but the volume doesn't change anything. You do realize that exchange of bodily fluids doesn't last forever. You can take a bath.
Good advice. Good advice. I'll tell my daughter that.
You're not going to have a daughter. Nobody's going to sleep with you.
Right. If you can predict the future. You can tell me I'll never have a daughter. Nobody wants me. Thank you.
That's not the point. I'm talking about what you're saying. You're saying you should tell your daughter that, and I'm saying you don't think you're going to have a daughter because nobody wants you. But here's the thing. Let's imagine for a second that I told your daughter that there's nothing wrong with exchanging bodily fluids with 60 people. What have I said that is incorrect?
Nothing.
Nothing.
You are spot on. Good job. Excellent advice.
Oh, I love the snarky attitude when you can't answer a simple question, because the reality is the person who's had sex with 2 people might be horribly afflicted with sexually transmitted diseases that you can get, and might be horribly emotionally scarred from all of those relationships. And the person who's had sex with 60 people might have absolutely none of that. And you are judging one of them more harshly than the other out of ignorance and fear. And when I ask you to give a justification for it, you can't. You just mock.
I don't mock. I'm agreeing with you. You're opening my eyes.
No, wow. Okay, Mitch, I no longer can take you seriously because you're going to lie about the sarcastic tone you just did. So we'll just say goodbye.
No, you don't have to say goodbye. Just say,
nope. I said goodbye.
That was really good timing, by the way. That was excellent timing on the cutoff.
Thank you. All right, we have some theists.
Look, like, if you want to be like purity culture, more power to you, I guess. Like, please don't vote that way, but more power to you. You're just going to take yourself out of the gene pool.
Yeah. I mean, to me, those questions are like, I because of my views and who I am, I can't find someone who loves me or will love me. First of all, I don't necessarily know that that's true, because, I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene's got a boyfriend, although I guess she's getting a little bit better. But there are trad wives out there all over the place. And what I hear from these the male loneliness epidemics is either it is that they are a conservative and they want a nubile, pure,
oh, I hate that
nonsensical, virgin, whatever. Or it's they don't meet society's beauty standards, and therefore, that narrowed their pool. I can't do anything about society's beauty standards or where you fit. I can say that I have plenty of evidence that a little bit of riz and compassion and sensibility and views about equality go a long way to trump whatever. I mean,
it's one of these things where, like, and this is surprising, men. This is going to be a surprising, or yeah, I should say straight men. It turns out that, unlike you and myself included, women actually care less about how attractive you are and more about what your personality is. Like, just as a general rule, this has been studied. Women are less concerned with physical attractiveness than men tend to be. So, like, okay, say you're a 4 out of 10. There's somebody for you. You can be funny. You can be kind. You can be knowledgeable. These are all attractive features. Get one of them.
I have a song that's been stuck in my head for weeks now. I mentioned it earlier. Band's called Wet Leg, and the song is called Mange Tout, which is French, but when you write it out, it says "man get out" is how it's spelled in one little lump there. And it's a really catchy song. It got stuck in my head entirely, but there's a line in there that is, "You think I'm pretty, you think I'm pretty cool, you want to fuck me, I know most people do." And when I first heard that line, I was like, damn, that's some confidence, that most people want. And then, it's not like she's wrong, but it's the rest of the song is way more woke than Mitch currently is. And, I'm in agreement with Blitz. If I think people who look for the things Mitch are looking for, I think they have awful standards, and that they have unrealistic expectations, and that they are imposing pseudoscience woo bullshit principles about love and ideology and sex and risk and family, in a way that is the problem. And so, Blitz's advice to change the way you think and change the way you act is there. But it's like, I mean, you heard the mocking smugness. Oh, yes, you got it. I'll just tell my daughter that. I will tell your daughter that. I will tell all of your daughters that. There's no such thing as virginity. You don't have to save yourself for anybody. You are in control of your sex life. You should be in control of your sex life, not the government, not your boyfriend, not your girlfriend, not your they friend. You are in control of that. And if you want to bang everybody on the face of the earth who will do it, as long as you are being responsible and safe so that you are not putting others at risk and there's consent, boom, go for your glory. I'm in favor of sex work and sex fun and all that stuff. Sorry, Mitch. I guarantee I'm going to get laid more than you. And it has nothing to do with how we look. Anyway, I know Mitch wants to fuck me. Most people do. All right.
Nice.
Enough of that fun. We've got actual theists. And so here we go. Derek is a theist who says the earth is flat. Pronouns are he, him, and he can prove it. So, Derek, you're on with Dr. Blitz, and I will shut the fuck up.
Derek, is this the Derek that I think it is?
Hello.
Have we spoken before, Derek?
Hello.
Can you hear us, Derek?
Can you hear me? That's me.
Can you hear Blitz?
I can hear somebody.
Derek, have we spoken before?
No.
Okay. There's a Derek that I know who's also a flat earther, who I spoke to a few years ago, and I haven't heard from him since, so I wasn't sure if it was you. But okay, you think that the earth is flat? Why so?
Well, it's very simple. We observe flat Earth, we measure flat Earth, and we navigate flat Earth.
What do you make of the, say, surveyors who do not measure flat Earth? Their day job surveying and measuring the Earth. When they make measurements, it's not in line with the flat Earth. What do you make of that?
They actually do measure flat Earth as well because they use a theodolite. Mm-hmm. And the first step in when using a theodolite is to level with the leveling mirror. So you create a level surface,
right, and then
plane on Earth's surface. Sorry.
And then if you look across a lake with your theodolite, which has been leveled properly, and you see that on the other end of the lake, something that is the same height above the water is somehow lower than your eye level as established by the theodolite, what does that tell you?
So what are we looking? Do you have an example?
Yeah, I do. I can't pull it up, but there's a fellow named Baron Rutledge. He is a surveyor in the state that I live in. And he made a video of doing this. He went to a lake that's fairly nearby where I am, actually. The lake is, he went to a part of the lake that has a shore-to-shore distance of 1 mile. He got out his, in this case, it was an auto level. He placed the auto level 61 inches above the surface of the water. He placed a target 61 inches above the surface of the water on the other end, on the other shore, 1 mile away. Then he got and he looked into his auto level, and the target was below eye level as measured by his auto level.
Oh, so that's perspective, because they're both 61 inches off of the surface. So you're just talking about perspective.
how does perspective get you to two things that are equally level on a flat Earth? Why would one appear lower than eye level?
Because of perspective.
Perspective doesn't make things go away from eye level. On a flat Earth, perspective makes things converge to eye level.
Well, Earth is already flat. That's what we observe, measure, and navigate.
Well, I'm establishing with you that it's actually not what we measure. It's also not what we navigate. The point is,
well,
you know, if you
well, we
learn
actually
perspective
do
in high school
because-
art class, you'll find that perspective is like the perspective that you learn in art class assumes a flat Earth, of course. All of the things converge at your what is it called? Your point of infinity or your vanishing point or whatever. Everything converges there. That's where your eye level is. And so how could it be that something that is already at eye level, if it were closer, if you move it further away, it goes further away from eye level? Why would that happen according to perspective?
Well, because there's lots of factors with perspective, like the atmosphere could have changes, the light, things like that. But we actually have solid measurements of flat Earth. Like, have you ever heard of sea level?
Yeah, so sea level doesn't mean sea flat.
Well, level means flat.
It doesn't.
That's not what it means. It means the level of the sea, meaning its height above.
Well, above level. So what does level mean?
No, it's height above the seafloor.
Yeah. So if we set sea
mean?
level as 0, we use that as a foundation to say, hey, this ship is, 500 meters below sea level, and this hill is 500 meters above sea level. It is the normative, and it's not like it's a static thing because there's tidal fluctuations, but it doesn't mean the sea is level. It means from wherever you are locally, this is how far above or below the level of the sea, not level as in flat, but the height of the sea. That's where you are.
Define level.
There are multiple definitions for the word and usages for the word level. Words don't have meanings, they have usages. One of them, level, means flat, and one of them, level, could mean height.
Well, height is based off of a horizontal plane. When you measure something,
It doesn't have to be, no.
height of something.
You can measure height off of a basketball.
Sorry, go ahead. I didn't want to interrupt.
You can measure the height off of the surface of a basketball. There's no issue there.
You're still going to have a horizontal reference point, though.
No, you just need a vertical.
A point can't be horizontal.
Well, vertical is related to horizontal. It's perpendicular to horizontal.
So you can define a tangent plane if you wish, but that doesn't mean that the basketball itself is horizontal.
Yeah, we basically
Well,
pick a point. We pick a point. We pick a point. We pick a point on a basketball, and where that point is, we define a plane, which isn't the surface of the basketball, but a plane that is the plane that goes through that point. And from there, we can draw a line or a line segment that is vertical to that plane. A level.
When we measure something, the height of something, we don't measure from the height of a basketball. We measure from sea level.
It's the same thing. The ball
analogy.
of the Earth, you pick a point on the ball of the Earth, and you define a plane that goes through that.
You're pre-assuming the Earth is
I'm
a
not
ball
pre-assuming
first.
any. I'm not pre-assuming anything. I'm explaining the analogy to you because you clearly don't understand what an analogy is.
Well,
If
instead
the
of
Earth,
analogies,
I'm
let's go
sorry.
off of
I'm
reality.
sorry. Just wait.
Can we
Just
go off
wait
of
and let me.
reality
Just
instead?
wait. Just wait. Just wait and let me finish, please.
Well, you were interrupting me too, so.
It's my fucking show.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Cool. Like a basketball, if we assume that the Earth is round, like a basketball, we can have a point on either one from which we can project an imaginary plane that goes through that point. And from there, we can measure a distance from that point along a line or line segment that is tangent to that plane. If in fact the Earth is flat, you would get different results for that model with different planes. And so right now, pick a point on Earth, define a plane under the flat Earth model, and take your measurements from different places on Earth from that same plane to the same point. I don't think you have a model that can do that.
Models. I use reality for my example.
You don't.
Okay.
You don't. You're not in reality, but I'll stop.
We can talk about reality if you want. You and I have both
Yeah,
seen
we're talking about
sunsets,
reality.
right, Derek?
Whenever you measure
and I-
the height of something, it's always from a horizontal plane.
So, Derek, you and I
The-
have both
the
seen
surface.
sunsets, right?
Sorry?
You and I have both seen sunsets.
Right, sunsets, yeah.
Yeah, so like, and we've all seen sunsets on a cloudy day. The bottom of the clouds get all, pink and orange or yellow. They get illuminated in this beautiful way, right? And the top of the clouds are dark.
Okay.
Now, can you explain to me, if the Earth is flat, how could you ever have the sunlight getting to the bottom of the clouds, but keeping the top of the clouds dark?
Oh, I don't know what the sun is or how it works, and never claimed to know. Nobody knows what
Well,
the
no,
sun
I'm
is
just
or
I'm
how
just
it works.
asking you. Could you speculate?
No. I
Okay,
can
well,
talk about facts,
here's
though, like measurements.
here's the issue. Here's the issue, right? So, in order for the bottom of something to be illuminated, whereas the top is still dark, like what happens at sunsets to clouds, that means that the light source somehow has to be below the thing that is doing below the thing that is getting illuminated, right? Imagine that I have, for example, a sheet of paper I actually have a sheet of paper here. Imagine that I have a sheet of paper here. If I wanted, say, the bottom to be illuminated and the top to be dark, I would have to put the light source below it, right? And yet, surely you don't think that the sun is below the clouds, right?
I don't know what the sun is or how it works. I'm just talking about measurements.
Well, I'm just asking you, do you think that the sun is below the clouds or above the clouds? Whatever
I
it
don't know
is.
what the sun is or how it works.
I wasn't asking you what it is. I was asking you where it is.
I don't know where it is or what it is or how it works. I have no
Why haven't
knowledge
you
about
taken a measurement of the sun? If you're into reality and measurements, why don't you measure the distance to the sun?
How would one measure the distance to the sun?
Great question. Triangles. So you know how if you're looking at something from something close up, say in your car, like a tree, you're driving down the highway, the trees look like they're moving really fast, but the mountains off in the distance look like they're moving really slowly. This is something called parallax, and it has to do with triangles. So what you could
Parallax
do
uses not actual. It uses apparent angles.
Yes, it uses apparent angles to measure distances to things with known distances between the legs. So what I'm asking you is,
you're gonna have
if
to have
you and your
either
friend,
known
you're in New
distance-
Mexico, you're in New Mexico, Derek.
Well, hold on a second.
I'm in
order
Arizona.
To use parallax, you're going to
You
need
and I-
either a known distance of the sun or the size of the sun first. You'll need one of those.
Well,
to
let me
calculate
explain,
together.
and then you'll understand why you don't need those. So you're in New Mexico. I am in Arizona. You and I are probably a few hundred miles away from each other, right?
Okay.
We could figure out exactly how far away. You could just drive to me, I could drive to you, or if you trust it, we could use Google Maps or whatever it is. We can figure out how far away we are from each other. If you and I
Those are all
at the
measured
same time,
distances.
if you and I at the same time look at the sun and measure the angle that the sun is in the sky, if we assume that the Earth is flat, we can figure out where the sun is because we're both looking at the same thing. We can figure out where those
No, not
lines
true.
of
You're gonna
lines
need-
of sight converge.
Because you don't know what the sun is. You don't know how big the sun is. In order to find
You
out
don't
the
need to know how
distance,
big
you're
it
gonna
is.
need the size.
No, you don't. You
You're
just
gonna
need to know where it is,
Yeah, you do.
where it is from two different locations. As long as you know the
Okay.
distance between the two locations and the angles of your observation of the sun, you can figure out how far away the sun is.
I think it's
No, 'cause
wild.
you're going to need the size of the sun to do that.
I'm sorry, Derek.
You don't need the size
have
of the
to-
sun.
I absolutely
ahead.
have to interrupt for a second because I find it wild that the guy who doesn't know anything at all about the sun is
Nobody
interrupting
knows anything about the sun.
is interrupting me and everybody else to parade his ignorance and claim that everybody else is ignorant when an actual physicist is explaining to you how to fucking know this, and you're just going to assert that we don't know. This is why you are still scientifically
who traveled
ignorant.
to the sun to measure its distance?
This is why you are still scientifically ignorant, because you actually don't have an interest in listening
we're
and
not even
learning.
talking about science. We're
I'm
talking
sorry,
about
because
math.
you don't have an interest in listening and learning to the very people who can educate you on the topic. It's embarrassing.
Well, we're talking about math, not science. Do you know the difference between math and science?
Math is a formal science, by the way.
Math is measurement.
No, math is it's a formal science.
Science is rigid and empirical.
I love that you're going to lecture us on the difference between math and science while saying everything that is false and interrupting an expert who's trying to teach you. That's just
I'm actually
wild.
drawing you a picture right now.
You are no
an
expert.
well.
You literally have acknowledged that you don't know what the sun is.
Nobody knows what the sun is. Who traveled to
I
the
do.
sun to study it?
I know what the sun is. I know what the
How
sun
did you
is.
travel to the sun to study it?
I don't have to travel to the sun to know what the sun is.
You
Nobody
just look
does.
at it and make up stories about it?
No, I didn't just look at it and make up stories about it. I don't need to travel to it. What I can do is study what we've discovered about the sun and the other stars in the universe by taking measurements. Blitz has drawn you a diagram of how to determine the sun. So please listen.
So look, it doesn't matter how big the sun is, as long as you can measure these angles and you know the distance between me and you taking measurements, you can use some basic trigonometry to figure out how far away the sun is. It's not so
You'll
hard.
need the size of the sun or the distance
No, you
of
don't.
the sun to
No, you
figure
don't.
out
You
the
don't.
other.
Where in this
trigonometry
diagram
works.
does the size of the sun show up?
So are you saying that there's a straight line between me and you on the ground, right?
If the Earth is flat, there absolutely is, right?
Yeah. And
so
that's what you're saying.
So what
You're
we're
saying
going to
that we
do
use a triangle, right?
Yeah, so what we're going to do is we're going
So
to
the
test
bottom
your
line of that triangle
hypothesis.
is on Earth's surface?
We're going to test your hypothesis. And in order to test a
This
hypothesis,
isn't
you
a
assume it's
hypothesis,
true.
Science. We're talking about math. I didn't form any hypothesis yet.
The hypothesis is that the Earth is flat.
No, the hypothesis in science, scientific method, is identifying the cause and the effect.
Yeah, so well, no, that's not true. The hypothesis is just some idea that you have about the world that explains some set of observations.
No. Science is the study of natural phenomenon in the physical and natural world.
I love when flat earthers who didn't pass 8th grade science tell me, a scientist, professionally, what science is.
It's not 8th grade science.
Let's go through the scientific method together.
No, I'm actually going to mute you for a second, Derek, because I'd rather listen to me than you, and I don't even like to listen to me that much. Here's the thing. You have this great opportunity, Derek, to call in because you say you can prove the Earth is flat, but you can't. And you don't know what the sun is. And then you claim that nobody knows. And then you try to lecture us on what science is and what a hypothesis is, and that you're just doing measurements. And the funny thing is that the diagram that Blitz just showed you is merely doing measurements. Whether or not those measurements are taken from a flat plane or a curved plane is secondary to whether or not you can take those measurements and determine the angle. And then you take more measurements from different locations on Earth. And when you pool enough data, either the flat Earth model will be consistent with those data, or some other model of the Earth will be consistent with those data. But we can absolutely, I could set up a flat plane, a parking lot, and put me at one end of the parking lot in Blitz's diagram and you at the other end of the parking lot at Blitz's diagram. And we can take a measurement of a light fixture in the middle of the parking lot and get those angles. We can take a picture of a plane above us and get those angles. We can get all the way up to the sun and get those angles. And the parking lot may not be wide enough, a big enough plane for us to take angular, depending on our measuring devices, to measure angles to something the further it gets away. But that's also an interesting thing because it's definitely telling us when something is far enough away that being 100 meters apart on a flat plane is no longer measurable. The angles are no longer measurable for us with a particular set of tools. His model doesn't require anything other than we're going to take measurements and we're going to repeat this multiple times from different locations to create a map, a relative map of points on Earth with relation to the sun. That thing can then be plotted to show the shape of the Earth. But let's see.
Bottom line of the triangle.
It's hilarious. You were muted that entire time and nobody could hear you, and yet you were still talking instead of listening. That's the pinnacle.
I heard
on that
you.
diagram, you are the son of embarrassment.
So
Can I ask you a question?
Not me, but you can ask Blitz if he
so
wants.
Derek, look, the point is
So
that
the
you collect a
bottom
bunch of
line
data.
the triangle, is that on Earth's surface when you're measuring these angles?
Fortunately, what I was about to say will explain and answer that question. The point is that you take a whole bunch of data.
That's a yes or no question.
I'm answering your question. I don't think you make the rules here. You take a whole bunch of data of angles to the sun, and then distances between where those angular measurements were taken. And then what you're going to do is you're going to. I'm still in the middle.
I'm just gonna mute Derek. Nobody can hear you now, Derek. We'll bring you back when Blitz is done explaining.
Then what you're going to do is you're going to take the two competing models. You have this flat Earth model where all of the distances are collinear or coplanar with each other, like in this diagram, right? This is one of the models. And then you have another model where all of the points where you took these data points from are from the surface of a globe. And you look mathematically, you can examine which of those two models is more consistent with the data points that you collected. And what you'll find is that if you take two data points, those two data points could be consistent with either model. However, once you start taking more than two data points, now it will start distinguishing between those two models. And so this has been done. In fact, a basically identical experiment like this was done by the ancient Greeks 2,300 years ago. And they found that, of course, it's consistent with the globe Earth. But this has been repeated over and over and over again online on apps like TikTok, where this was done live by students at universities across the globe. Ironically, it's the globe, not the plane. This kind of experiment, this kind of data collection has been done. And consistently, what you find is that the data is consistent with the Earth being a globe. The data is not consistent with the Earth being planar. And so when you say that we measure a plane, we absolutely do not. And this is one of the measurements that is inconsistent with the Earth being planar.
I'm going to bring Derek back now.
Sure.
I have a question about what you said. Are the distances on Earth's surface? Is that the bottom line of the triangle when you measure these angles?
So the distances are whatever the distances are, right? In real life, you can measure distances regardless of what shape the Earth is. So if we're testing your model, if we're testing if your model fits the data,
I'm not using a model.
We will assume, of course you are. We will assume.
No, I don't use a model.
For the sake of the test, we will assume for the sake of the test that the Earth is planar, and we'll draw it like this. And then we will see if the data can match this kind of geometry. And then when we want to test the globe model, what we will do is we will have a different geometry. It's a little bit more complicated, but I can draw it for you if you want. And then we will see if that model fits the data. I only drew you one of these things.
When we measure angles to the sun, is the bottom line of the triangle along Earth's surface?
You can measure angles to the sun with respect to a vertical if you want. Doesn't have to be with respect to a horizontal.
Vertical is perpendicular to horizontal.
Vertical is perpendicular. Well, vertical would be in the direction of down. You don't actually need a horizontal in order to define a vertical.
Well, you can, but you'll still have a horizontal because it's perpendicular to the vertical. So you'll still have a horizontal.
But that horizontal is not necessarily following the shape of the Earth, right? I mean, like, and surely you agree with this. You can measure a vertical while you're on top of a mountain, but that doesn't mean that the mountain is flat.
Right. So when we measure angles to the sun, is the bottom line of the triangle along Earth's surface?
I don't know what you're not understanding. The angle to the sun is, you can measure it with respect to a local horizontal, or you can measure it with respect to a local vertical.
He's literally answering you, but you
Either
won't
one doesn't
stop
matter.
fucking talking long enough to get the answer. I don't think you're serious.
Well, I'm not sure. Did you say that the bottom line of the triangle is on Earth's surface or not?
If you assume the Earth is flat, of course it is.
So when you
let me draw you another
triangle to measure these angles, is the bottom line of the triangle curved?
Okay, I'm going to draw you another diagram just to explain how this works.
I can't see your diagrams.
I'm going to show you in a moment.
That explains so much. We've done so much work to provide you a graphic that you can look at, and you're not even watching the show?
Well, I'm on the phone. I'm sorry, I'm not. But can you tell me if the bottom line of the triangle is curved or straight?
There doesn't have to be a bottom line of the triangle. You're taking a
You said you're
measurement
doing
between.
triangulation.
I'm sorry, Derek, but shut the fuck up.
Well, you're doing triangulation, right?
I'm answering your question, but you clearly don't want the answer. You won't let either of us finish. So I'm going to completely hang up on you now because there's another theist, and I'm going to answer your question offline because we've already answered it several times. And you should then go watch the fucking video where Blitz has now drawn a graph of a flat plane and one of a curved one. Measurement is between 2 points. We use from that point, you use a plane, which does not necessarily map to the surface that you're standing on at all. And you measure an angle relative to that plane. You can do that from any point, anywhere, to any point, anywhere. And when you take those measurements and amass them as a data set, they will either map to a flat plane, an actual flat plane or an approximation, or a curved surface, or some other surface. And as it turns out, the Earth is this mangled ball of oblate spheroid from different heights. And so you can do triangulations where you take something from the top of Mount Everest and from Los Angeles, California, and Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. You can take all those measurements and measurements from elsewhere. You can take some from out in the middle of the ocean, and you put all those data points together, and those data points are consistent with not just the model, but reality, the thing that you think that you're working with when you're not, because you know like this much about how to measure things, and you don't know what the sun is. Well, I do. The sun represents a little more than 99% of the total mass of the solar system, and it is a massive ball of plasma. It's about 4.5 billion years old. And that's not enough to know about the sun. That's barely scratching the surface of what we know about the sun and how we went about learning it and how we went about measuring it. And that's still an order of magnitude more than you know about the sun. And I have no expertise here. And you're meanwhile interrupting and shitting on someone with massive expertise. Like, I don't even need to be talking other than you have embarrassed everybody who's slightly dumber than me.
He doesn't even want to know about neutrinos.
But they go through stuff. Does that mean we're like Swiss cheese, Blitz?
As far as neutrinos are concerned. Now, here's another thing about cheese. So cheese has holes. If you have more cheese, you have more holes. But also, if you have more holes, you have less cheese. True. Therefore, more cheese is less cheese.
That's right. God is love, love is blind, Stevie Wonder's blind, therefore Stevie Wonder is God. That's the level we're dealing with there. Let's see if we can do better. Devin
Hopefully.
is calling, Devin's a theist calling from California, pronouns are him, wants to talk about aliens and foreign structures that could be on the moon. So welcome, Devin, you're on with Blitz and maybe me.
Hello, how are you guys?
My blood pressure's a little higher, but I'm doing okay.
Yeah, mine too.
I heard that conversation. I believe it.
Is the Earth flat or round?
He believes in the moon. It's of course round.
At least I believe in the moon.
There you go.
So I have a few questions. What do you think about the theories of whenever the astronauts first landed on the moon, they saw something like structures or maybe aliens, you know? Maybe they just saw aliens and they were never allowed to speak about it. And they've actually dodged questions about stuff like that in the past.
I'm a little skeptical. Like, why haven't the other, space agencies, like the Indian Space Agency or the Chinese Space Agency or the Japanese Space Agency or the European Space Agency, why haven't they reported on these things? Because they have rovers, they have orbiting satellites with cameras. Why haven't they reported on these structures?
And also, if I saw something and I never told anybody, how does anybody know I saw it?
That's a good question.
Well, maybe they did see something, but they were forced to not talk about it.
Okay.
No, but how do you know about it?
What's the evidence?
They're allowed to talk about. Oh, I'm sorry.
Like, for example, I'm looking down at my desk right now, and I see something on my desk, but I'm not going to tell you what it is. And let's assume for a second that Arden forced me to never talk about it. If it weren't for me telling you that Arden forced me not to talk about it, you would have never known that I saw anything or what I saw, or that somebody forced me not to tell. So what is the foundation for this, the thing you're calling a theory, which I don't think is a theory at all. I'm not convinced this is actually testable or falsifiable, but what is the justification for saying maybe the astronauts were lying and they found something that they were prevented from talking about?
There have been different people that have come out and said that there were things like that. And there's
were
several
any of them
other,
astronauts?
Pardon?
Were any of them astronauts?
Not that I know of. I'm thinking more of like
where did they get their information?
People like high government officials and people in the military, you know, like
famously known to tell the truth, by the way.
Where did they get their information and how did you verify it?
Well, because at a certain level, this information is known.
How do you know that? Are you at that level?
Damn. Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough.
Okay.
I am not.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not at that level.
I was in the military.
Okay, wait.
I was in the military for 8.5 years. I was in the military for 8.5 years and had various clearances. I don't know that I had any clearance to alien stuff. There are things about my time in the military that I can't talk about, but none of it has anything to do with aliens. And I don't know how anyone could say somebody out there definitely knows something about aliens and they're not talking about it, and then say it's possible that there are things on the moon that the astronauts saw but were prevented from talking about. Meanwhile, we have photographs of the moon, both from the orbiters and from not. Now, granted, we can't get high enough resolution from the Earth. You'd need a massive
300-ish meters across.
Yeah, in order to be able to see the rover, in order to even be able to see like the rover from Earth. But you can see that stuff from the Artemis missions orbiting around. So what structure do you think is on the moon that they're hiding, and why are they hiding it?
Maybe structures from an extraterrestrial civilization that has already been to the moon and has left things behind there. But maybe we've already taken all of these things and hidden them away.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, hypothetically speaking, if
this
was real, if this really did happen,
and maybe
that is what we would do.
Devin, and maybe angels and fairies and pixies came and helped us.
Okay.
Do you have any evidence that they didn't?
Well, I mean, there's less evidence for that than like what I'm talking about.
No,
what's the evidence for what you're talking about?
Have you ever heard of a man by the name of Dr. Stephen Greer?
Yeah, don't call him a doctor when his expertise is has nothing to do with space, has nothing to do with physics, has nothing to do with anything that's relevant for this conversation. Stephen Greer is a known grifter who likes to sell books.
I mean, this is like a theory that he's
it's not a theory
talked about before, so
he is not qualified to say anything about any of this.
I mean, he's pretty well educated, and he's got connections in government, and he's a
physician. He's not educated in anything to do with space.
Yeah, he's got an MD from ETSU, and he was trained in transcendental meditation, which is also bullshit. What about that gives him any expertise on ancient terrestrial structures on the moon?
He's been in contact with several different whistleblowers that have
How do you know that?
shown him like
How do you know
He has a
that? Is that
website
what
where
he
he's like
says?
posts all this stuff.
Is that what he says? Who are these whistleblowers, and how do we know that they're reliable?
Well, you can check their credentials. He has all these things on his website.
Well,
Like, he has, like,
I don't know
different-
why I would trust you to tell me to check anybody's credentials when you just cited Greer as if he's credentialed in this. And now it turns out that the only credentials that Greer has that's relevant to this is some whistleblowers supposedly talked to him. That's not credentials.
I mean, okay. Well, what about all of these different whistleblowers that have come out, Air Force, people in the Pentagon, all these different people that have come out and talked about this kind of stuff. And
I'm not aware of
actually,
anybody. I'm not aware of anybody coming out and talking about structures on the moon from other aliens who have presented any evidence or even in a position to have known. Is there anything you don't believe when you hear it?
As far as, and just to be clear, as far as I remember, the people so I only paid attention to some of these congressional hearings, but as far as I recall, the people who made the claims, like there are non-human biological organisms or non-terrestrial biological organisms in our possession, none of them actually testified under oath. What we have is people testified under oath that somebody told me that we have non-terrestrial biological organisms in our possession, or somebody told me that we have non-human origin spacecraft in our possession. You will find nobody testified under oath that they saw it themselves, or that they've confirmed this themselves. You will find testimony of people saying we saw something that we can't explain on our radar, or we saw something that we can't explain on our infrared cameras. But you will never see in these testimonies under oath, yes, I saw the non-human sentient biological organisms in the lab. You will never find that. Because, of course, these stories are made up. I mean, or at best, grossly exaggerated.
It says here you're a theist. Do you think angels are real?
I believe that, well, actually, yes, I'll say that, yes.
Okay, then why did you scoff when I suggested that angels might have helped us hide those alien things?
Well, because you said that in a way to ridicule my argument.
Yes, because I find that the proposition that there's a God or anything supernatural that we can actually identify to be ridiculous. That's why it's, by definition, it's deserving of ridicule. But you think that's real. And so I suggested a real possibility. You think it's real, and I suggested a possibility that you think is real. Do you think God helped us hide those things?
Well, let me ask you this. What do you think about...
Do you think God helped us hide those things?
Okay, because we can only see a little bit.
Do you think God helped us hide those things?
Hide the aliens?
Do you think God helped us hide those alien structures?
God is much bigger than that.
How do you know?
Well, I mean, it's my belief, right? Like, if I say that, like, I believe in a creator, whether it be any of the creators that, I mean, it could even be a creator that, like, I just made up too, Like, it's
you
just
believe
like
in things you just
belief.
made up? Well, that's really unsurprising considering the level of evidence you're giving us for men on the moon. But my point was, when you consider whether it's possible that there's alien stuff on the moon that we're hiding, you don't seem to have considered whether or not God might have helped us hide that. Why not?
Well, I mean, if he created everything, and if he knows everything, and if he can do anything, then wouldn't you say that it was in his plan?
I have no idea. I don't believe there is a God who can know everything or do anything. I don't think there's a God at all. You do. And so you're the one that's telling me you don't think God helped us hide the alien stuff, but you can't give me a reason.
Well, I mean, I think that a God may have, so a creator created us, and then
I don't believe
we have the tools to explore this world and possibly even explore this universe.
I agree that we have the tools to explore the universe. I don't see why a creator is relevant to that.
So God created us
Prove it.
in order for us to experience the beauty that is this universe.
Prove it.
Well, just think about it. I mean, isn't it like a statistical?
Just think about it.
Statistically,
Devin,
for everything to be the way it is now without somebody intervening.
Devin, listen to me. I'm trying to save you from embarrassment. You just said, think about it. To a former Southern Baptist fundamentalist evangelical who's been live debating the God question for more than 20 years and lectures at universities and conferences around the world. I don't have the science knowledge that Blitz does, but trust me, it's going to look really ridiculous if your argument for God is, well, think about it. So let's try again. What's your justification for thinking that we were created for that reason or at all?
What are the odds? I think that it's more statistically likely that we were created because everything is so perfect here for us, right? Like we can survive under these really rare conditions for planets.
Devin, so we have exactly one universe and we have none that we can compare it to, right?
Right.
Let's imagine for a second that there were two universes. One of them that was created by a God and one of them that wasn't, and there were beings in both of those universes. What can you point to that's different between those two universes so that one can know it was intentionally created and the other universe wasn't?
That is a really good question.
I know, I've done this for 20 fucking years.
He did tell you in advance that he's thought about this.
I've been following you for quite a while.
You've been following me for a while and you didn't expect this? That's
Devin,
cool.
I have a second question that might be, this is exactly like, that's such a good question, Matt. The question I'm about to ask is significantly more trivial, but it's definitely the way that I think about these things. So on the one hand, you're a Christian, right, Devin?
Yes.
Okay. So on the one hand, you believe that Jesus died for our sins. He incarnated, came to earth, died for our sins, resurrected, all of that stuff. What about the aliens that you think built the structures on the moon? Do they have their own Jesus? Or are they just sinless, soulless beings that don't care, that don't go to heaven at all? Because if there's aliens, it seems like they would need their own Jesus. Otherwise, you're just telling me that, like, oh, humans are the only special ones in the universe, and all of the other aliens who can build stuff on the moon, they're meaningless. It's kind of weird.
I think, well, yeah. I mean, the Bible doesn't say anything about like aliens or any of that shit. But I mean, like,
I know, isn't that weird if there are aliens, and the God is real?
Well, I mean, there's nothing to say that he didn't create them too. Or
but do they get their own Jesus?
There's nothing to say that he didn't create the thing that would create them.
By the way, this reminds me of that. Is it an SMBC comic, I think, where it's like, aliens come and visit Earth, and they're like, they notice that a bunch of people are talking about this Jesus guy, and they're like, oh, you guys have Jesus too? We have Jesus too. We love Jesus.
Yeah, exactly.
How does it go? It's something like, when he came, we brought him cookies and he hung out for a while. What did you guys do with Jesus? And then it's like, you did what to him?
Zach, who creates SMBC, he and I went to lunch ages ago. I've got his book that's got lovely. That one in it, but that guy's brilliant.
He really is. But like, do they have their own Jesus, the aliens, or what's going on there?
So, like, for example, how literally do you take the Bible, Devin?
To be honest, not very literally. Like,
okay,
I mean,
that's
there's no way
wise.
There's no way that like humanity came from just two people, right? Like, there's no way.
Yeah,
totally on board.
And that's fine because it takes us away from biblical literalism and having to account for this. But what would the reason be for God to create everything and then hide so much that people are inventing fictional stories about him that he never corrects?
Well, it's like God does interact with people, right? Like, we have all these people that have stories about like miracles and like, I mean, I have even my own stories about in my own life where I'd say that God intervened, right?
Devin, you said God interacts with people. How could you prove that God has ever interacted with anyone?
So if I was in a situation, okay, where I was falling asleep at the wheel and I'm on a 2-lane road and we're on a road where, like, if you go over, you're just going to fall over a cliff and die, okay? Say that, like, right before you cross over that edge where you would fall over the edge and, you know, say you're asleep and say, like, right before you fall over the edge, you wake up and you can, like, attribute that, if you're Christian, to God.
Yes, if you're
Or, I mean,
foolish
in
and
any
gullible
religion,
and
you can
don't
say
care
that's
about
God.
evidence, you can attribute that to God, but that doesn't mean you're right that it's attributable. What is the justification for attributing that to God?
Well, it's a miracle because, like, if it was even
That's
a
not what I
split
asked.
second later, I would have died.
Okay. And if you would have died, you would have died. And you wouldn't be sitting there thinking that you were saved by the magic man that you think exists. My question was not what would have happened. My question is, what's the justification for crediting a God with that experience?
Crediting God to it.
Do you think that's never happened to an atheist or somebody who believes in some other God? And do you think that there are believers in your God that have gone right off the cliff and died?
Well, I guess it was their time to go, but it wasn't mine.
Yeah. And do you think that there's somebody who determines when it's your time to go, or is that just the way the universe works?
Damn, man, you actually might have just changed my mind for real. Thinking about it, I mean, it's more likely that it's just randomness.
What do you have to say?
That's not
Let's
to say
go.
that a creator. Wait. That's not to say that a creator didn't create the whole universe and then.
No, it's not, Devin. Devin,
right?
no, it's not. I'm not saying a creator didn't create the universe. I have no idea. But you can't demonstrate, and neither can anyone else, that it did happen that way, evidently. And so until such time as somebody can demonstrate it, it would be irrational to believe that that is, in fact, the case. Meanwhile, when you talk about what's more possible, what's more probable, you can't demonstrate a real or even fictional probability for God. What is the probability that a God exists and created everything? And how did you come to that conclusion? Because the reality is, when people say that, all they're saying is, I don't know enough about how the world works. And instead of acknowledging that I don't know enough about how the world works, I'm going to take something that seems unlikely to me, that doesn't make sense to me, and I'm going to say that is less probable than magic, which I have no evidence for, but it's comforting.
So you would be mad if I don't know if it was a Big Bang, I don't know if it was God or not. You would be mad if I chose to believe in God.
I'm not going to be mad. I'm
You
talking
would
about
be,
what's.
You would be.
I'm talking
You would rather
about
it be the other way.
I'm talking about what's rational and warranted to believe. If you have a rational, warranted belief in a God, good for you. I'd like to know so that I can have that rational, warranted belief as well. But you, and this is not to pick on you, Devin, you, like every caller I've spoken to for the last 20 years, you don't have a rational, warranted belief in a God that you can present. And so I'm still stuck not believing. As soon as somebody makes a good case for a God, I'm a believer. Doesn't mean I'll worship. I may believe there's a God and think he's a piece of shit. I believe there are kings and presidents and I think they're pieces of shit. That doesn't mean I'm going to revere them, but I'll at least believe they exist. You don't have an explanation for why you believe it, other than it seems like it makes more sense. And you don't have explanations for why is God hiding instead of correcting all the misinformation about God?
It's got to be all part of his plan.
Well, that's a good excuse. Maybe, isn't that, so your solution is consistent with it's what God wants to do, and it's also consistent with there is no God. You have to come up with an answer that differentiates between those two, just like you need to come up with an answer of how to tell the difference between a universe that was created and one that doesn't, or wasn't. I'm getting ready to release a video on my channel about how to come up with candidate explanations and what should or shouldn't be included. And nothing supernatural has ever been demonstrated that it should be eligible as a candidate explanation, including gods, angels, fairies, pixies, or anything. And until such time as they are demonstrated that they should be considered a candidate explanation, it is unwarranted to include them. And now, what ends up happening is we should be saying, I don't know more.
So, and I perhaps take a slightly looser view than Matt does. If, say, you were sitting in your home and, you knock out for a nap on your couch, and then you wake up and you check your phone, you do all those things, you're looking at your phone, and then you look up and like Jesus is in front of you. And he's like glowing and there's like a halo around his head. And then you get out your phone and you check that like on your phone that like your phone camera sees him. And then he walks over to your sink and he turns on the sink and he snaps his finger and wine pours out. Those may, like, if that happened to you, I think you would be totally reasonable to believe that Jesus was like actually God. I think it'd be totally reasonable. Right? Like you have like everything that you're experiencing is telling you this. Does that mean that anybody else should believe in God because you had that experience? Absolutely not. Because from another person's perspective, the more reasonable thing to explain that is that you were obviously asleep, you were having a dream. But like I can understand why somebody would believe something if all of their sense data is telling them that something is real. Maybe that would be rational for you, but not for anyone else.
I would agree that it may be possible. Listen. I would agree that it may be possible for someone to have a warranted belief in something that I do not have access to that warrant. Right. However, the description you gave, I don't know how you ruled out an advanced technology that was feeding you a strong delusion.
I mean, like, look, so at that point, we have to just think about like what kind of ways would you maybe be able to. The point is I was trying to get at that you might have a strong warrant that nobody else has access to. I
can understand why someone would lean that direction. I just don't know how you pick, it's likely to be God over, it's likely to be a technology I don't know.
I mean, we would have to examine the person's priors and all of that stuff. But this is to say, just because something happens to you that makes you lean one way or the other, that doesn't mean that it's compelling to anyone else, which is why these kinds of personal experiences like, I was saved from going off of the edge of a cliff or whatever, it's never going to be compelling to anyone else except perhaps you.
Okay, but like if that did happen to me, like Jesus showed up, he talked to me for a bit, and he told me that he turned the water into wine. Would it be reasonable for me to like for the rest of my life dedicate myself to spreading the word of Jesus Christ?
I mean, like, yeah, it just depends on your priors and things like that, but it doesn't mean that anybody else should listen to you.
If Jesus shows up in my room, I don't want him to turn water into wine. I want him to provide me with evidence that I can present that would warrant others to believe that Jesus talked to me. I need Jesus to demonstrate, which he's evidently capable of if the models of Jesus are correct. I need Jesus to provide warrant that goes beyond me just trying to avoid acknowledging I might be delusional. Why doesn't that happen? Ever. In the history
it hasn't
of the
happened
world.
since the invention of the photograph or the camera, of course.
So you think that you're better off, being completely rational all the time, not believing in a God, not believing in any sort of possibility of a God.
Okay, Devin,
you feel better.
Okay.
You feel better doing that than the other way.
Yes. I think being rational is better than being irrational, almost universally and by definition. But also you decided to expand it and include that I don't believe in any possibility of God. I don't believe that gods are possible, but that doesn't mean that I believe gods are impossible.
So it's a possibility. It's not impossible.
No, Devin. I don't know if it's possible or not. It would depend on the definition of a God. So it's wrong to say, it would be correct to say, I do not believe that gods are possible. It would be incorrect to say, I believe gods are impossible, because possibility needs to be demonstrated and impossibility needs to be demonstrated. And if you can't demonstrate either one of them, you don't get to use the impression of one to try to lean towards the other. So I'm not saying gods are impossible. Some gods definitely are by definition impossible, but other gods, I don't know if they're possible or not. But until somebody demonstrates they are possible and then demonstrates that they're plausible as an explanation, I don't get to include them as candidates. But my question was, why do we have nothing that clears this up if there in fact is a God? And your only answer seems to be God doesn't want to. Well, cool, fuck them.
I guess I guess like damn. I guess it would make more sense if it wasn't the way that it is in the Bible as God, but more so like God created the way, like the thing that we're experiencing right now is happening because of God, of a creator. But like, it's not the way that like any of the religions say it is.
Okay, let's throw out all the religions.
We don't see direct evidence of like, oh, like God showed up in my living room. No, you just see the evidence. Like your life is the evidence, right? Like you just
no,
look
my
around
life is not
like,
the evidence for a God. You just went from a really good, hey, let's toss out all the religions. Maybe we don't know enough to be specific, to an absolute nonsensical, your life is the evidence for God. No, it's not. My life is the evidence for a life. What about my life in any way demonstrates a God is possible, probable, or likely? I mean, you're going to claim that my life is evidence for a God. So what is it about my life that is in any way pointing to a God?
Devin?
I was sort of like trying to say that there's a source, right? Like the universe, like before the universe, you know, like the source of that, like the creator of this whole thing, like that could be that could be feasible to me.
But how do we even know that there was a creator?
I think that.
How do we know that there was a beginning?
How do you know?
How do we know that the world hasn't always existed?
Exactly.
Yeah, like that it always exists. How would that even make sense though?
Well, look, in the worldview that you hold, the creator has always existed. So just take that perspective on the creator and consider applying it to the universe.
So that's just making shit up.
What do you mean? The point is that if you want to say that, well, the whole universe being here is evidence of a creator, you first need to show that the universe was created, right? It's not enough. It's not enough to say that the universe exists. You need to show that it actually had a beginning and was created.
Like, for example, where does lightning come from? Once upon a time, somebody thought it was Zeus hurling it because they didn't have another explanation. And I'm sure there was somebody who was calling into the ancient equivalent of a call-in show to say, oh, lightning comes from Zeus because what else could it be? But the problem is that nobody ever demonstrated that it could be Zeus. And so when we talk about the origin of the universe, we have, for example, Big Bang cosmology, which describes the expansion of the universe. But we are limited in how far back we can go. And that model has space-time essentially expanding, but the something that it expanded, the something that expanded, we have no idea whether or not that always existed or not, right?
Yeah.
So if we don't know, what point is there to propose that it must have been created by a being? Do we have any evidence of any beings capable of creating universes? Because I don't see any. I don't even see any reason to think that's possible or a candidate. Or
arguably Zack Snyder created the Marvel Cinematic Universe or something like that.
But without getting away from it, because this is Blitz's point, and he and I are in agreement, despite the fact that I have no fucking expertise here. Everybody keeps saying, hey, the universe had a beginning. And the way I framed it, which I'm hoping Blitz can come up with a better way to phrase it, and already has, it's just I haven't memorized it yet, is that it's not that the universe had a beginning. It's that our local presentation of space-time has a point at which it was condensed, and we can transfer back no further into the past than that mathematically. So we can't say, and it may be absurd to talk about before the universe if the only reference of time we have began with that expansion. But the content that became the stuff of the universe, there's no reason to think that that didn't always exist. Especially if you're just going to try and say there's a God that always existed that is the explanation for that. You've just pushed something that always existed back a step, and I don't know what the justification is for that.
Dang. No, that's a mic drop right there.
Okay. Well, let's end on that,
You got
Kevin,
me
and
with
call
that.
back another time. And, you know, everything ends on good terms. We all got something to think about, and I'll get to Super Chats.
All right. Good night.
Thanks, Devin. All right. Arden, you want to do announcements before the Super Chats?
Yeah, let's hit it one more time. So,
Sweet.
you guys, here on the line, we have these cool, nifty little events called LineCon, where 3 of our hosts here on the Line Network will do a roughly 20-minute presentation about any topic that they're interested in, and they're usually, you know, somewhat tangentially related to what we do here, but not exclusively locked into the topics that we have at our shows. So we've got 2 coming up this weekend. There's normally 1 a month, but we missed 1 last month. So this month, coming up, this Friday, April 17th at 5 p.m. Central Time, will be Matt Dillahunty right here doing Magic and Skepticism, Sarah from Leaving Faith doing Deconstruction in the Nervous System, and Eric from Skeptics and Scoundrels doing What Is and What Isn't a Cult. And then Saturday, the next day, April 18th at 3 p.m. Central Time, we'll be having Alyssa Lube do a talk on sex and media, Dr. Ben doing one on how to think like a doctor, and yes, I know it says Eric SNS, but that is in fact Seth Andrews doing a talk on Jefferson's Jesus. All of that at patreon.com/calltheline. Patrons of the $15 and up tier get access to the live event, and then the lower tier patrons get access to the recordings of the events after the fact. So yeah, if you want to support the line on what we do there, I know we aren't normally so pushy of our Patreon and stuff. We're trying to be a little bit better about that so that we can eventually have an in-person LineCon. But yeah, we've got the double coming up this weekend, so we wanted you guys to be aware of it.
Awesome. Just before we get to supers, can you one up me?
Sure.
I just want to see something real quick, just for the people who are going to be tuned into LineCon, because this is basically how I'm going to be sitting. You're gonna need to bring a rubber band, and one of the things I'm potentially going to teach and talk about is if you take a borrowed finger ring and put it on a rubber band like that, you can, just with the power of your mind, keeping your hands equidistant apart, make that ring climb up that rubber band. It's very difficult to do, but it's actually really easy, and you can learn it, and you can have fun tricking kids or whatever else. But there's stuff like that if you don't know what's going on, you can be fooled. And if you do know what's going on, you can definitely still be fooled. And so we'll talk about that on Friday. But we got super chats.
All righty.
I'm a believer now, by the way. I believe in magic.
Sweet. $10 from Joshua Everett. Quick, the audience blinked. Insert the CGI globe and erase the bit of the firmament that showed up in the corner. Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Joshua. Oh, can you see these? We tend to alternate.
Now I can. Yeah, now I can. I just couldn't see them before. We're good. Yeah, so this is from Dusk Frame with the $10. Love seeing Matt run the full unapologetic gauntlet. Question for Mr. Dr. Blitz. That's the correct name, by the way. What's something cool in science that you don't get to talk about as much as you'd like? Cool in science? Well, I do. Look, my job is science communication. That's currently my occupation plus the research that I do. So I do get to talk about whatever I want to in science. That's cool. But something that I mention every single time I get this answer or get this question is that there's a way to have repulsive gravity, and it's not even that hard, cosmologically speaking. You take a black hole, you spin it real fast, and then you drop something fast along the axis of spin, and it'll bounce off. It's very weird.
$10 from Flippity Giblets or Giblets. I'll go with Flippity Giblets. Just because I'm going to jib like Quake jib and not GIF like graphics. Fun seeing you in the chats of other live streams. John Cohen has quickly become one of my favorites. We're reaching out to John. I'm going to get John on to do one of these episodes to hang up. Appreciate you. Appreciate everything you guys do at the line do. Thank you so much. Yeah. I stopped into John's. I found him just coincidentally, probably because all of you guys are watching him. And I just stumbled across his one day, probably after I was done watching Blitz. And I was just like, yeah, I like this guy. We're always looking to get new people on and involved because I do things wrong and I get things wrong. And I will never say that my way is the best way or that I have the best temperament or the best knowledge or anything. And so getting people on who do things differently and know different things just makes it better for everybody. And I like what I saw, John, and I reached out and he said yes. And so we'll work on scheduling it. Thank you so much.
Wow, that's 20 euros from Black Soul 66. You're both so awesome. Dr. Blitz probably have answered this 100 times somewhere, but can you explain in regular person language what is written behind you? And Matt, out of topic, what's your favorite snake type? All right, so I'll go first. What happened to my green screen? There it is. So this is a green screen behind me, by the way. It is a picture that I took when I was a grad student. This was 4 years ago now. Instead of taking notes when I was meeting with my supervisor, I would just take pictures of the blackboards that we were working on. So this is basically scratch work from a problem that my supervisor and I were working on collaboratively. I don't actually even remember what we were doing, to be honest. It's the area where you will see this kind of mathematics is in something called called differential geometry. These triangles have certain meanings. They're not just random triangles. They are differential operators. And you'll see commutators somewhere over here, and you'll see, normal vectors somewhere over here. So it's a type of mathematics called differential geometry. Matt, what's your favorite snake type?
It has changed many times over the years. Currently, my favorite type, at least of the ones we have, is a diamond python. My favorite snake of our personal collection is Toast. That's a hypo stonewash breadless python that Arden got me for my birthday. But we have a diamond python that comes from the Gothenburg line. So they are far more yellow in their coloration when they get older. If you don't know what a diamond python looks like, I will see if I can find a picture of the parent of the one that we have so that you can see kind of what she'll look like when she grows up. It is a girl, isn't it, Arden? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, because the coastal is a boy. So you'll get to see kind of what she looks like when she grows up. And if somebody, just because Jimmy likes when I do this, if somebody donates a $100 super chat in the next 10 minutes, I'll actually go get our baby diamond python and show her off. But I'm going to find the picture of the mom either way.
Might need a shorter timeline because we don't have that many supers left. But yeah, if you send $100, we'll hang out and go get a snake.
If not, you'll probably see it some other time. I don't want to bribe people into doing stuff, but I don't draw in many super chats because I'm busy working and I forget to mention them about 1 million times.
I think it's your turn.
$10 for Joshua Everett. The sun is a massive incandescent gas, a gigantic nuclear furnace where hydrogen is built into helium at temperatures of millions of degrees. They might be giants. 1993.
Sounds about right. From Empress Lizard with the $10. Once you've taken enough college classes, you realize psychology is really biology, biology is really chemistry, and chemistry is really physics, and physics is really math, and it's all science. Yeah, that's about right, yeah. The physicists will get mad at you for that, though. I think the chemists will, too.
I don't know if I can get this all on screen. Oh, yeah, there we go. $10 from Dust Frame again. Theists and atheists are both wrong. The world was created by little gnomes out of star stuff, and it's in the shape of a giant gnome house. By the way, that is the mother of our diamond python, and it's even more yellow than that picture actually shows. That picture's kind of dulled out, but that is a diamond python from the Gothenburg Zoo line.
That is a very elegant looking snake.
The baby is like genuinely, Arden and I are absolutely giddy at how pretty this snake is. But thanks, Dust Frame.
And that was the last one, I think. So
What?
Oh,
oh my gosh,
fault.
I'm a failure. No, it's my fault. I'm the guy that forgets to remind people. I just want to have the conversations. Anyway, it's also, things are rough out there, and there's not a lot of people who are able to donate as much. We appreciate the fact that you're here, that you're watching, that you're contributing, that you're calling in, that you're spreading the word to other people. We also do, like, you know, the dollar bills and the jingles and the super chats and everything else. But I will say, we are closing in on another fundraiser for recovering from religion, and the world is a hot mess. And the fact that so many of you showed up and participated here tonight, you guys keep making my Wednesdays probably the best therapy that I get. But if not, I do therapy on Thursday so that I can reflect on Wednesday. But huge thank you to Blitz for agreeing, especially on fairly short notice, to come hang out here. I'll do it again a million times whenever you've got time. I always learn so much, not just about the science, but about different questions to ask than I would have normally. So thanks a metric fuck ton.
I believe that is 1.004 imperial fuck tons. But I'm delighted to be here all the time. I mean, at this point, science communication and doing debates and, you know, explainers and things like this is my job, so I'm available pretty frequently. So you know how to contact me.
You bet. I will see everybody soon. Please do your part to help make the world a better place, whatever that looks like to you, and working with others who agree. We don't need to let the fascists win. We don't need to let the scientifically illiterate win. We don't need to buy into conspiracy theories. We don't need to promote things that ultimately harm our chances at growing and learning and making life better. You can go to patreon.com/calltheline and linemerch.com to support us. We'll see you next time.